morning. I hope you like tiles, and I hope you like taking turns, because that's what we're doing today. We're taking turns with tiles. That's the tenuous link between these games. Thanks for tuning in. We are looking at one game sent in by a patron today, which I've looked at before. It's developed a little bit, and we're looking at 2 Steam demos from the public list. So those of you who are new to the channel have games sent in to indiegameclinic.com. They usually have to be work in progress games because we're kind of giving people feedback and looking for like easy wins in terms of how they could improve their games. But some of them are further along than others. So, you know, this one, Pirate, Pillage, and Plunder. This is one that I picked out because I find it genuinely interesting. This is a game from the form on indiegameclinic.com, which I looked at and I thought, yeah, there's a lot of stuff there that I kind of like. The other one, Tiles and Vials. Let's go and have a look. I've played games with the same premise as this and enjoyed them. We're not going to get into a massive AI discussion today, but this is kind of triggering my Blade Runner sense a little bit, mainly just because of what seemed like a lot of discrepancies in art style and everything. And I mean, maybe this game has that a little bit as well, but the overall art direction of how all of the color and form of everything fits together looks good. So when I talk about this stuff, although I do have a general kind of suspicion and even disgust towards certain types of AI use, mostly it's just that the outputs are bad, and then when people use them, they're not kind of critical enough of how things go together. So this one is just on the edge of triggering that thing for me, where it kind of looks like some of the things don't quite fit together, and what that often means is that the UX is going to be bad as well, because, you know, we're outsourcing as much of our thinking to a computer as possible, which is not how you do good design. So I'm going to say that up front, because it's possibly going to come up in the chat or whatever later on, but I'm not going to focus on it a lot. I put these games together because they're all based on kind of collecting and positioning tiles, but they're not necessarily going to be in the same genre. So we'll check out Digital Druid first. The dev said this was heavily inspired by UFO's 50s Party House from UFO 50, which is a great little game. One of my favorite games in UFO 50, which is like it's a push your luck game. It's a deck builder, but it's a push your luck game like blackjack. You're drawing things from a deck. They combo in particular ways when they come out in certain orders, and if you've seen my video essay from about a year ago about deck builders, I talked about this game as being like, it's one of the first digital deck builders I've played that really works like analog deck builders do, in the sense that you are like building your deck, manipulating your deck every single turn, rather than like playing a match and then putting one card in your deck, and then playing a match and putting one card in your deck, which is kind of like the norm since Slay the Spire. So I find this format very, very interesting, and I'm always interested to see people develop it more. In another game that I think is a good reference point for this type of stuff is a board game called Quacks of Quedlinburg, which is a bag builder rather than a deck builder. You have a bag of like little tokens and you pull them out, and if you get too many of the bad one, then you go bust, that kind of thing. And it's a really neat way of having like one decision point that the player is making. I draw the next card, I draw the next card, but quite a lot of richness in terms of how the things that come out of the deck or the bag interact. So that's kind of, just close some stuff in the background that I think is beeping at us. I'm just starting war with my internet service provider, so if things go down during the stream, it's been pretty bad this week, and I think it's because the summer holes just started here, so the daytime strain on the internet is way higher in residential areas. So I'm in the process of trying to get out of my current contract and switch to a better one. So sorry if the stream goes down at all today. Digital Druid demo version. Okay, we're getting some kind of... I'm enjoying the music. Let me just turn it up. We've got some like very mellow ambient stuff. So yeah, aesthetically, this is doing some interesting things. I'm not sure about the title. Is it, we're a druid, right? Is the digital part just the fact that it's a video game? I don't know. Make one bloom to save the garden. Okay. Does that mean make one of these bloom to save the garden? I think all the work that's been done on this UI since I last saw it is good. It's very strong. It kind of looks a little bit like a mini game in a sort of PS2 era, PS1 era Final Fantasy game. Like I think it was Final Fantasy 8 that had the little card game. It kind of looks a bit like one of those. It's like my nostalgic memory of one of those when you throw the music in. Okay, so this is like we're gonna draw cards out onto here, I guess. Load a random seed from your pouch in the garden's next empty plot. Okay, we're gonna do that. It becomes a bush. We get one nurture. Okay, so these are like our resources that we're getting based on what's placed out here, and I think rot is the one that we don't want, or something like that. Nurture, nurture, nurture. I get what we're doing with the digital glitch thing, but it's not super working for me. Okay, we've got one rot now, so this is our 3 strikes and you're out panel down here. Not super thematic. Nurture. Okay, when activated, use on a non-bloom seed or an empty plot to transform it into a +2 nurture tree. That's not a bloom, so I'll do that there. Okay, so craft is like a special ability that I have that I think I can use once per season or whatever you want to call it. And then here's the stuff I can buy. I mean, I think overall, just to give people the project history here, I've played this twice before, I think. And every time I've said there's an appeal to like looking down on a map and wanting to build like a grid out of little tiles that is just such a big, obvious appeal. And the dev hasn't kind of gone along with that, and that's totally fine. You know, you don't have to, every time someone gives you a nudge on your game and says, hey, maybe this should look a bit like this, you don't have to do it. But I will keep harping on about it because it's such a natural fit for me to have like a tile-based game that is based around the theme of an environment. And then as you place the tiles, you see that environment. They don't need to really be connected like they are in something like Carcassonne. But when I think of like putting tiles down in a board or card game type setting, this is kind of what I imagine getting towards. Is like it starts to look like a place. And I mean, there's a card game that does this from a side view that has the same premise. So Kodama, this isn't on a grid, but you're building like a tree with little Kodama spirits on it, like a Spirited Away dudes. And it's just that satisfyingness of seeing a real thing start to develop as you place your things down, right? In board games, it's called tableau building. You're building a kind of permanent or mostly permanent thing on the board using your cards or your tiles. And that could be a thing that everyone shares, like the town in Carcassonne, or it could be an individual thing for you as a player, like this thing here. This is a tableau. And the thing about tableau is it's a really good way of mixing together like a thematic thing of like, I'm building a location with mechanical information. You know, Ex Libris, game where you're building a library and you collect these cards that are your different shelves of your library. And as you do that, you build a tableau. And I think the adjacency of different books on the shelf matters. I can't remember. But it's that kind of merging together of the thematic and the mechanical that is a really good use of that kind of system. And no matter how nice this game looks, because I really like the aesthetic of this game, I think the music and like someone just said in the chat, like the kind of Encarta vibes of this. It's like I'm chilling out on my parents' computer in 1997, and I don't have any games, and I'm going on in Carter. And the music is more there to... The music kind of evokes that 90s time period, right? Like, this is like hold music on a late night TV channel that you can't remember the name of or something like that. It all works aesthetically, but I just don't... I think it's a missed opportunity for the theme, for it to not be that we are actually looking down on a garden as we grow it. Yeah. And I'm going to always come back to that. And that's not to like downplay the work that dev's done here, because I think that this looks really gorgeous compared to the first couple of versions of it I saw. And I think there's a lot of stuff here that feels quite coherent. The music goes with the aesthetic. Like, I think everything, just if I look at it at a pure aesthetic point of view, I think this has some kind of nice secret sauce going on. But the theme of it being nature kind of links into the music a little bit and the general relaxing vibes, but I still think it's a missed opportunity to not treat it as a like looking down kind of map, right? And I'm very tempted at the end of this stream, if I get through the other games quite quickly, to do a mock-up of like how I imagine that working, because I think it feels like one of those situations where I've given a piece of feedback based on what I think would make way more people like this and find it appealing. And I think the developer is making their creative decisions about the game based on what they think they're able to achieve, rather than what is best for the project. And sometimes you have to take... And I might be totally talking out of my butt there, but it does feel like that. Sometimes you tell people, oh, this would be better if you do this, and maybe they agree with you, but they carry on doing what they were doing because they're worried to try the new thing because they think it won't be very good, or they think they won't be able to achieve it, right? And the thing is, the thing I suggested required a little bit more bespoke attention to like how you make the things, whereas this approach is like, okay, we can get stock photography and put them in the things. And it's like, okay, any game that revolves around collection, whether you're collecting cards or troops or loot, those things are like supposed to be the kind of objective desire of the player. You know, there are things and they have different levels of rarity, and I can look at the rarer or more expensive things and go, oh, I really want that thing. But if that thing is just like a crunched up stock photo, then you're kind of not thinking about how the desire economy of those sorts of games is meant to work. Yeah. So yeah, yeah. So the feedback said that. So what we're gonna do, I'll do 10 minutes at the end of the stream where we take a screenshot of this, and I do like the cruddiest version of what I'm imagining quickly in Canva or something, because I really do think that what I was talking about with you before is achievable. It's just finding the right top-down assets. You know, I imagine this. This is going to be a deep cut. I imagine this old Amiga 500 game that I had, that was like, I'm trying to find it. There was a game of the TV show Postman Pat, and there was a bit where you had to go and herd sheep, and they were like these little cute sheep you saw from above. I can't find a screenshot of it though. But you just need pictures of things from above, so you can get this kind of sort of cutesy looking down on top of the game kind of vibe. It might not be totally achievable. I just think it's such a missed opportunity, because I think that's what people expect to be doing when they're placing tiles on a grid. Okay, let's actually play the game now. I've got 6 nurture, so this is our kind of basic currency to get these things. And we can fill the deck with basic stuff so that we're less likely to go bust. That's one strategy. So we could buy 2 more bushes, which is like basically just loading the economy more towards getting nurture and less towards going bust. Or we can invest more in like getting a big thing straight away. We can get a raven. Corrupt. Seeds beside raven, then gain fert for each corrupt seed. Oh, so the active is like an ability you can choose to trigger on the tile after it comes out, which again is the same as Party House. Corrupt the seeds beside the raven, then gain fert for each corrupt seed. I don't know what corrupt does though. Okay, so we might have a bit of a UX problem here in the sense that we've got like a really decent description here, but the keywords aren't kind of taught to us in this context, which is where we need them. Nert is fine. That's fine because we can see what it relates to down here, but we don't have any kind of anything to hook corrupt into and go and understand what corrupt is. So we can get a birch. That gives you 3 nurture, but it has a 1 in 3 chance to have rot. I think that's maybe a better investment than 2 of these. So I'm going to do that. We're going to get birch tree. The bane of my existence in Minecraft. They're such an ugly tree. I'm sorry, birch fans. But silver birch, ugly tree. We got a rot straight away. Okay, but we get a fertilizer with that as well. Okay, cool. The garden is in danger. I'm going to cast wild growth on one of those to turn it into something that doesn't have rot. We get 2. Okay, so that's our little 1 get out of jail free card. Now we've got 4 nurture and 2 fertilizer. And fertilizer allows us to do these larger powers, like we can till the soil, which adds another empty plot. These are all mechanically identical to Party House at the moment, so I think we're going to have to work out, you know, in the bigger scheme of the project, how do you make sure that people aren't just like, well, I would rather play Party House, and that's in a compendium with, you know, with 49 other games. Because at the moment, it's like all of your uniqueness is in the framing and in the mechanics, it's not there so much. Oh, you can hold right click for keywords to pop up. Oh, that's cool. Okay, cool. I like that you've got that feature there. You might need even just like a little icon here of the mouse with the right click and then like an info thing would be helpful. Like it just, maybe it's darkened and it goes like it highlights when you're in a context where you could click it. Okay, we've only got 4 to spend now. Let's get a pig. So the pig gives us extra nert for each rot we have. So it allows us to like make the most of those. And we're going to till the soil so we've got an extra slot. We've got 6 slots now. If we can get all the way up to here and have a tile next to the oak, oh, that gives permanent nurture to the things that grow next to it. Does that one thing I would query here is does beside mean here and here, or does it mean here, 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 and here? Because again, thinking about the assumptions that players will make about how your game works, this is a space, right? And if you talk about beside, it's like if you are making a grid and the grid is actually just 7 things in a row and then 7 more things, and actually the grid is a straight line but it's being represented as a grid, then you need to think about how terms like beside work and whether they mean what players will assume they mean. Okay, we're 1 rot, 2 rot. We'll wild growth on that one. I'm gonna risk it anyway. Yeah, and we get the extra because I took the risk and we drew the piggy. Excellent. Right, 6 nurture this time. I'm gonna get another fresh earth and another pig. Let's go for a risky build. Let's do it. This is not how I usually play these games, but I'm going to risk it for a proverbial biscuit. Wild growth there. Load another seed. Okay. And we get loads of bonuses because of the pig again. What's the Raging River do? The Raging River is Purity, which it takes away. I think Purity takes away a rot. Yeah, passively reduces rot by 1. Okay, let's get a Raging River then. That seems like a good safety buy. And till the soil again. So we've got the whole... The stream went down for a second then. Actives can still be used. Is that an active? Right, where's the... Oh, the wild growth is the active. Okay. I shouldn't have used that there because I got rid of the bonus for the pig. I think the level of complexity of this game is very good. Like, I think that moment that just happened there is a good example of, like, there's enough complexity for me to mess up, right? Like I just did, but not so much complexity that I never realized that I messed up. Seeds beside tree stump gain fert for each seed with rot and rot. Okay, let's try that. I think the way that the kind of push your luck thing is handled here in relation to the theme is very good. I think this can be... You're playing in a weird space in terms of complexity here because the theme and everything kind of lends itself to it being a kind of more cozy type thing, but then we see all of these rules and it's suddenly like, oh, I'm playing Magic the Gathering, which could feel like a little bit of a mismatch. But I think the way that the kind of balancing of rot and fertilization works as a thematic thing feels pretty good. But yeah, it feels like it's in the same space in terms of audience as like a board game like what's it called? The bird one, Wingspan or something like that. It's like the theme is there, the theme is integrated with the mechanics. It's a little bit dry maybe for some people. It's not cute. It's more kind of for someone that appreciates the science of the thing, I guess. But that's fine. Do we want to use wild growth? Let's have a look. So seeds beside tree stump gain fert for each seed with rot. So is that gaining fert? I mean, that has fert anyway, so... Oh yeah, that's got more fertilizer now. Okay. But I don't think that's permanent. I think that's just for this one. And turn one of those into a slightly better one, and then everything scores. And we've got 9 fertilizer now, so we can expand the space again. Make the whole place bigger. I think it's time to get a moo cow. Give a random loaded fresh earth. Permanent fert. Okay, so we need more of these and we can upgrade them. I think the balancing of this is very, very interesting because you're really, really leaning into like trying. You've got 2 layers of pushing your luck, basically. There's the pushing your luck of the basic blackjack thing of, you know, I've got 2 strikes. I don't want the 3rd strike. I probably shouldn't. You know, you've got the basic turn by turn pushing your luck, and then there's a much like bigger engine building push your luck of like how much do you build into leveling up how much your risky rot cards do stuff, your risky rot tiles. Let's look at the Earth board game quickly. I want to just quickly see that. Board game Earth. See if we can rip it off. See what their cards look like, their tableau building cards. Yeah, see, this is a similar thing to what you've got. These are more like kind of encyclopedia pictures. But I think the difference is that the adjacency of these doesn't matter, right? So we're not building with the idea that what you're building is next to each other. And I think that's the thing that is kind of bothering me about this is both the physicality of the board and some of the game rules kind of lend themselves to the idea that these are things that are spatially next to each other. And that's what's kind of triggering certain rules and so on. Okay, we've got We've used our wild growth to cancel out one of the rots from the fresh earth cards. I'm going to do one more hit and then leave it there. Did I go bust? Yeah. Corruption blights the garden. The garden must bloom. What happened there? Oh no, I didn't. Okay, so yeah, we need some sort of bigger kind of negative celebration there, because it felt a little bit like I wasn't sure if the game was going to restart because I'd failed. Okay, we want to keep that there because that gives us stuff from our pig. Yeah, that's cool. I like that idea about the adjacency bonuses and the roots, kind of. It could be kind of like, I'm imagining like again, because we're going to Encarta land, sort of like slightly janky 3D looking roots, but they're very, very low res and look like something out of like Seventh Guest or something like that. Big old pine plant. So one problem that I'm having so far is I'm not very aware of what the overall goal is. So I'm going to pay a bit more attention to that now and start to look for it. But so far, it's like, okay, we've got a time limit. We've got a number of days left. Okay, so the goal is basically to get to the end of the grid. I think that's a very interesting change in the goal from Party House. I know we're going to keep comparing it to Party House, but you know, people who are interested in this are likely to have played that and have it as a reference point, and we do want to look for the differences. I think changing the goal so that the goal is to fill up the grid is very cool. It's quite intuitive as well in terms of the theme. Like, if we're a druid, we're helping the forest grow. What could be the best expression of helping the forest grow? Filling up the whole thing. Makes sense. Spend 10 nut to pick one of 3 seeds not in the greenhouse and add it to your porch. Some seeds can only be found in boosters. Let's do that. Let's see what we've got. So we've got a wild rose. Gains 3 nut for each other wild rose. So that's a set collection thing. But it removes your nurture. So we'd have to get multiple of them for it to be worth it. We've got the hawk. If the next seed in the pouch has rot, cull it for 1/3. Otherwise, load it. Okay, that's interesting as well. The toadstool gives you 4 fertilizer and a rot. And it's got a fungi tag and maybe fungi trigger together, because, I mean, these all have, like, type tags. I'm going to go with the hawk. Just because it makes it easier to push our luck. And then I'll get another fresh earth, because that synergizes with the hawk. So the hawk eats the next seed if it's a rot seed, and turns it into fertilizer. Oh, I keep clicking on that for next. I think it's because it's on the right. Wild growth on that one. This is the one. You can see this little yellow token on here. This is showing us that this one has been permanently upgraded, so it has more fertilizer. So I'm doing that one instead of that one. I will till the soil again. So it looks like here we can change what our craft skills do. I haven't quite gotten into doing that yet. Oh, so these are to be unlocked. So we start off with the wild growth craft that lets us... Honestly, I would be really tempted to just call these spells. I think it's going to make it just more sense more quickly. Get another birch. I need to remember to save and get more boosters because they've got more stuff in that we don't know about, and I want to see what it is. Got 2 piggies. Okay, one more. Actives can still be used. So that seeds beside tree stump gain fert for each seed with rock. They don't have seeds because they are piggies. They're not seeds, are they? I don't know. Use on a non-bloom seed. Reroll craft. Change the available craft. I'm going to do that. I don't know what it is. Use on a corrupt seed to uncorrupt it and vice versa. Okay. Oh. Purchase booster. Cull all birds. Herbs, uncorrupt all corrupt seeds, and gain permanent nert for each purity. Elephant. If the next seed in the pouch is water, cull it for 4 nurture, else load it. I mean, that seems pretty good. There's no downside to that. It's free real estate. Yeah, I think the music in the game doesn't have a repeat on it because it just stopped at some point. I'm playing quite conservatively. Sorry, being boring. What do we need to do? We need to do fert as much as possible, right? So let's lean into everything that's gonna, because we need to keep tilling the soil to make the to be able to fill the whole grid. I'm not going to do it in 12 days, but that's fine. I mean, I think a game like this, if you were to do like big playtests of this with, you know, dozens of people, and you started to notice that lots of people were winning the first time that they played it, or the first time that they spent like an hour playing it, that would probably be a sign that the game is too easy anyway. Because it's not going to... unless you do the kind of party house thing of having a number of scenarios, make the first one relatively easy to complete, and then make the rest like very, very challenging. 1 in 3 chance to gain nert for each plant. I don't like those odds. Bird. Return non-water seeds to the pouch. Cull duck. That's interesting. I feel like there's an elephant duck synergy that we might have. I don't know. I'm going to try it. We're going to build the famous elephant duck deck. No, we're not. Ugh. Yeah, I don't know if going bust twice is going to... Oof. Gonna need one more run after this, I think. It's definitely got its hooks into me on a challenge level where I'm failing, and I already feel the desire to start again and do better. That's a good thing. That's a good thing for the game to kind of achieve, I would say. I want to get the screenshot of it now so that we've got something to work with. Just go like that, and do. Because I think there's a lot of aesthetic bits of this game that are really good, and I think it would just be a shame to um not make the most of how the theme and mechanics work together and kind of give people what they expect or a better version of what they expect, you know? There's something charming about it feeling like some sort of Encarta encyclopedia thing, so I don't want to poo-poo that too much because I think it's neat. Just think there's a slightly more satisfying way of doing it. Right, what I'm going to do is let myself fail. We're going to do some art stuff, and then I'm going to come back and do another run before we do the other two games. But it's definitely got that thing in it where it's got its hooks into me, and I want to play it again because I started to fail, and then I was like, oh, I'm sure I can do it better. So that's already a very good sign. But yeah, in terms of what I would do with the art here, I think if we think about like what each of these things is, I'm gonna just draw on Canva because it's quick for me, which is not obviously a very good game art tool. But if we were to just sort of like start from the assumption that, I mean, actually, maybe if I do that as a frame, how does this work? Yeah, like I put a square frame in here. This isn't going to be a very good way of doing this. It's just to illustrate a point. And then I find a texture of grass from above. Put that in there as a start. Okay, so that would be like the base of our tile, right? And then obviously you're going to have your post-processing that you do over the top, which I can maybe do something like it at the end of this. And then I'll put a couple of these in. Because what we would really want, if we're going from the illusion that we're looking down and we're seeing it from above, we would want them to sort of just accidentally line up a little bit. So I would start them all off with like the same background, and then go, okay, we're gonna have. Is there a pond from above, like directly above? And obviously, I'm using an image library here. But the thing is, if you're going to do the post-processing anyway, then you're going to end up with a similar visual effect to what you've got now. It's just it will feel more coherent, and it will create that satisfying thing of like, I am building a thing, which is the thing that feels like it's missing at the moment. Or it's not missing. The gameplay works fine, but I think you might be losing a little bit of that kind of just obvious satisfaction thing that people would get from feeling like the thing they're building is a real place, you know? So, I mean, this isn't perfect because it doesn't look like it's from above. It looks like it's from an angle. But if I were to put like one of these in here and then crop it so that it looks like it's kind of just... And I think what has happened is you've developed an art workflow that you're quite comfortable with. And that's good. That's a good positive thing. But then you like maybe you found the thing you're comfortable with and you don't want to like experiment with the things that you're uncomfortable with, which is very normal. It's like a very normal thing to experience. You've developed a comfort zone and now it's like, I don't want to get out of the comfort zone. Let me just do some Google stuff here as well. Let's go pond from above. This is going to be more helpful because we can just hack stuff together from various places for now. And like that looks kind of contiguous with the grass around it because it's starting from a photo, so it doesn't really matter that it's not the same. Okay, duck from above. Hello, duck from above. That's my new band. My new band name. Okay. I'm going to make you so small that we can't see your watermark anymore. How about that, duck? Right, now, what I need to do, because of the way that Canva works, and it's stupid, is turn this into a screenshot so that I'm not wrestling with the... This is stuff that you don't have to care about because you can do this in Photoshop or whatever, but I just don't have the tools available for that right now, and this is quicker because we're working with a lot of collage-y stuff. So we've got the base of the tile, and that's going to, like, trigger my brain to know... I mean, maybe that's got the water keyword, I can't remember. And then we put some ducks in it or whatever. Maybe this isn't the best photograph because it's a little bit too reflective. But we just want them just big enough to be able to see that they're ducks, right? And I think one of the issues with this approach that we're going to quickly get to is that things don't look like what they are from above, right? And we can go pig from above. There's a pig from above, even if we use a toy pig. There we go. See, if this was my game, I would be doing it this way, and then I would be just like, okay, I don't actually have a license for that image, but what I will do is I will gradually, like, morph it until it's obviously something else. You know, like flip the direction of certain things round, all of that kind of stuff. So maybe the pig tile, we go, okay, this is a bigger animal, so we're going to put 2 on there. And it probably needs to look a bit muddy, so maybe we get, like, some slightly different stuff. Because to make these sorts of things legible, whether it's top-down or whatever type of art, you want them to have their own kind of internal shape so that once you've looked at them a few times, you can kind of read them without necessarily looking for ages to see what they are. This was the distinction I had a little bit of trouble with Carnholt, and I think people will have trouble with that card game Carnholt, is that, like, so many of, like, the color and shape things within the card art themselves are quite similar to each other, and I think that's going to make it a little bit more difficult for for players. So if I were to do some little splats like that, and then it kind of becomes obvious it's a pig. It also helps to, like, highlight that there's a rot synergy with pigs, right? So we could start to think about, okay, maybe all of the cards that benefit from rot have some sort of, like, common physical thing in the background of the art. And then if you did take this sort of approach, then you start to see other benefits of it. It's like, oh, I can signal more of the game mechanics through the art because I have control over the art, right? And it's kind of the same thing I'm doing with my game, with how, like, the collectible elements, the deck of things works, is that it's like, okay, now because I have more control over the art, I can start to think about how different bits of the aesthetics signal different things about the gameplay. Now the trees are going to be the real challenge, because it's like, okay, how do we show that a tree from above is a silver birch or something like that? So this is the place where my plan kind of falls apart a little bit, because it's going to be hard to make it clear which different trees. But it also just depends how many trees you've got in the set. Because if there's only 4 or 5, then making them, like, clearly distinguishable from each other might be easy. The other thing you can do is, if we want to do silver birch, we can have a version of the tree from above, and we can also have a fallen log of the tree next to it, so that we've got, like, we can see the log even though we're looking from the wrong angle to see it on the tree, you know? But yeah, this stage, it's like, obviously the approach I'm kind of describing here creates a bunch of extra work, and it would really be up to you to work out whether that is worth it in terms of, like, what it adds. But I'm usually a big kind of believer in, it's usually worth putting slightly more effort into things if the end result is more of is gonna like do more for people. Because you got the core problem here of like how do you make sure that this is different enough from Party House. And some people will just if you do like a reskin of a game with a few mechanical differences, some people will just go, okay, yeah, I mean I like this theme and this art style more than the other game, and that's great. But if you wanted to actually do better than the other game, then you need to also deal with the people that played that game and want to play your game, but want to be assured that yours is different enough. Been through this recently with talking to the I mean, we'll do a stream on it again soon, but talking to the dev of Fame or Folly, and there's just like this constant question of like, how much do you use that's from Balatro, and how much do you vary from Balatro? See, that doesn't look... What I'm trying to do is, again, this is just because I can't find the right... So, silver birch log. Let's see if we can get... Just want like one fallen log that's laying on the floor, like that kind of thing, right? So you can just clearly see the trunk of the tree. But like, this is just a good example of how you don't really know what the real problems with the approach will be until you start doing it. Because I do think having a top-down grid is just way more satisfying, but you can see how it raises issues with the viewpoint and specifically with it being trees. Because when I think of a game like this, I'm thinking of something like Barren Park, which again, it's like Barren Park has that I'm looking down at a grid and I'm building a place and it has like little creatures in it and stuff. But the difference is that the kind of trees and stuff, the forests are just like big blocks of forest, which means you don't need to be able to see what they are beyond just like the level of this is some trees. Whereas because some of the content in your game is already much more specific types of wildlife, you've got like a different set of like design needs there. This is fresh soil, so that would be like, I guess that would just be like a straight up just that kind of thing on the soil tiles, right? Bernard, that's a good, yeah, I mean, that's a good shout. Like, so you would, the way, what Bernard's describing is we would go, okay, I'll just move that over there for a sec. We would take the trunks of the trees and then do like a forced perspective Zelda dungeon Binding of Isaac thing where it's like we're looking at a mini globe version of them. I think the trees are a difficult one to resolve, especially, I think if you had an illustrator that could do them from scratch, it wouldn't be the problem. But I think the issue is that I'm trying to do it. I'm trying to kit bash it out of bits of art, and it's very, very difficult. But you can see how, like, one of the things I think is if you do put a bit more effort into this side of things, you start to develop a visual language for the game where you can go, okay, water cards should definitely have this color on. Cards that turns something into fertilizer should usually have this mud texture on. And then you have more control over that, and you can start developing like a visual language that links to the mechanics a little bit. But it's not gonna, it's. I'm always going to be an advocate for people just putting in a bit more effort and like trying to do the things that are difficult, because I think it tends to, even if it doesn't yield a result you can actually use, you just learn more along the way as well. Where's the closest thing you have to crunchy effect that you've currently got? Okay. Yeah, and then you would basically do whatever the post-processing you currently have. Because I think at an aesthetic level, I like these bits of art, and I think that this is how they should look in terms of like the crunchiness and the colors and everything. And I don't think I'm doing the best job possible of showing you what I mean. But that's also because I don't have access to that type of the kind of like crunchy 90s encyclopedia game thing that you've got going on in the original, you know? So if we take that, put the pig over there, increase the brightness, do the same with the dark. And then when you've got two of the same together, it's like, okay, it looks a bit more board gamey now because it's repetition, but one sec. Where did I get that one? It was in there. So, I mean, I'm glad we've done this, because even if you don't really like this approach, I think what I would do with the ducks, actually, is something more like this. And then what you can do is if you want to, like, if you want it to be more visually varied, when you draw them out, you can rotate the tile 90 degrees. And then occasionally they'll just, like, accidentally line up in satisfying ways, right? So if you sort of drew them so that they can... So they feel like they're obviously repeats, but they can kind of rotate. Then again, you're getting that feeling that you would get if you were playing a real board game and people were placing the pieces down manually. But yeah, I think even just doing this little exercise, it does raise the issue of, like, how do you do trees? And it's not insurmountable, and it might be worth the effort, but it is a clear problem as well. Where's my pixel gone again? Everything is so buried in here. It's... Yeah, like, yeah, little rough, very sort of subdued sound effects, like kind of said. Like, it has a category, like a plant does like a little boop, and an animal does a little animal noise. You'd really want the kind of effect where if you were to, like, get them out as printed bits, you could actually make a little picture with them. And I don't think I've quite got that here. But it does, I guess it kind of, what I'm getting at is it makes it feel less abstract as well. And then you're doing slightly more for thematic gamers. Because what I do really like, and I think I like a lot about this game, but I think the goal setting of, like, you basically got to finish the grid. That's really intuitive. I think that's actually even more intuitive than the goals that Party House has. Because in Party House, the goal is to score a certain amount of points that you're not really aware of when you first start playing. So yeah, in Party House, the way that the scoring works... You've got your yellow and... you've got your two resources like you've got in your game. You've got a number of turns, so the fail state is just, I don't do the thing in the number of turns. And I think that might actually be a design problem that is worth thinking about, is what I often experience in Party House and what I just experienced in Digital Druid a moment ago is there's a point about 2/3 of the way through the game where you can see that you're losing and it feels really bad, but you may as well just concede and start the game again. And if there's a way you can have, like, maybe an alternate fail state that happens more early, or like a clearer push to make the player concede, it's just really, like, unsatisfying that point in the game. And I don't think that's a problem that's unique to Digital Druid. I think it's a problem you're inheriting from Party House by having the same system, because it's basically, you've got this quite high scoring bar you need to reach. The only fail condition is, did you not do it in time? And that's fine if a game is very short, like a time limit game where you play a thing for 3 minutes and then did you get enough points? Or you play a thing for like 10 turns, did you get enough points? but the whole process of like going through a turn in this is quite long. And that means if I get to the stage I was just at a moment ago, where I've only got 7 turns left and I've only filled up a third of the board, it's like, well, I'm pretty clear I should quit here. So maybe if there's some way to make certain types of losses happen more quickly and feel more satisfying, like if you go completely bust 4 times, then the game is over. I don't know. I don't know what the way around that problem is, but I do think it is a inherent problem in Party House, and you've kind of inherited it. But yeah, the way the win condition in this one works is you use your popularity and your money to buy new characters, and then you use your money to expand the house as well, and then you have to get enough characters out with this star to win the game, right? This level requires us to get 4 stars, so to win this level we have to get the ghost out 4 times, because the ghost is the character with the star on, and the ghost will have like required us to get loads of money or popularity in the first place. So the win condition is very different, because the win condition here is about what's in your deck and what do you draw, whereas the win condition in Digital Druid is basically, can you build your economy up enough that you can afford to stop buying new tiles and instead focus on expanding the board so big. And then you know, when the board is really big, you're going to be tempted to like overdraw, and at that point your economy may be very much based around rot and you're more likely to fail. So I think the win condition in Digital Druid is actually much more interesting, and it's just more intuitive that if I'm told that the goal of this game is to grow a lovely garden or a lovely forest, then having that expressed as fill up the whole grid, or like yeah, it is fill up the whole grid, isn't it? Because it's not just empty out all of these spaces, it's also, you know, put something next to that tree at the end. That's really, really strong. I think that's a very good difference of this game, but I do think it's worth thinking about how do you avoid that game state where, you know, we're 2/3 of the way through the game and we know we've lost already. Is there a way you can hide that? Is there a way you can have some other way of losing more quickly? I don't know. It's the Monopoly problem. It's what I call the Monopoly problem. It's like the thing that makes Monopoly not fun is the length of time you spend knowingly losing, right? Knowingly losing is fine in a game when it's swift. That's why Call of Duty gives airstrikes to people that are already winning, because they want to give the people who are losing the mercy of losing quickly, because that allows them to just get into another game nice and quick. Single player game, knowingly losing for a long time, it's kind of a bummer. You're just sat there thinking, should I quit or not? And that's like a very general thing that's not unique to this game, but I think the format of Party House gives you some of that inheritance. Fern. Oh, we've got a different. Was the Fern here last time? Or have we got a different spread? No, we've got a different spread because we've got a Bison. Okay. Let's go for water. So we're going to get Ferns which score more next to water, and then we're going to build Ferns and water and anything that synergizes with water. I think that will be how we'll start. And I mean, that thought process is a good sign about the game as well. It shows that the theme is coherent and intuitive enough that I just understand that water is like a category of things that matters in this game, you know? The hiding a little guy on Warcraft strategy, yeah. I mean, that's why they've kind of changed their win and lose conditions over time, isn't it? I mean, that's arguably kind of, I think, trying to solve that problem you described, where people used to play like Age of Empires and they would just like run away from you with one character to like troll you at the end of the match. One of the reasons why MOBAs work is that they don't have that issue, you know, because the goal that the two teams are seeking isn't something that can be mitigated by like the players avoiding being killed, because the player's goal is to defend an NPC thing rather than just like stuff that they own. There's differentiating between like the stuff that the player owns and controls, and then having another set of things that the player doesn't own and control, and that means that the win condition is a little bit more out of the player's hands. And And yeah, like video games have that problem more than real games, because in something like chess or Magic the Gathering, you have the real social pressure to concede at the right time, right? And in those games, like conceding is kind of treated as a expression of skill anyway, because it's like, okay, I'm losing the game, but at least I know when to quit, you know. And then you're showing people that you're very knowledgeable about chess or Magic the Gathering by bowing out, even though you could have kept playing for like 30 turns, but you can see it's not going your way, so you bow out. And that's like that's a courtesy to the other player, and it's an expression of your skill at judging the game state. And that feels good in the context of playing a game of chess and like being a gracious loser and going, okay, or you know, there's levels of it, because you don't want to like bow out before the other person can even do their cool thing, but you also don't want to do the thing that kind of just described of like, you know, the multiplayer game where you're running around the map hiding your last guy after your base has been destroyed, right? But bowing out in a single player game doesn't have any of that kind of social stuff around it to make it feel like a kind of booby prize for losing. I'm gonna risk it because we didn't draw much that turn. Yeah, exactly. Like agency is a sort of consolation prize. Score then I don't know what corruption means. Oh yeah, we've got the keywords here. Corrupt. Nert fert ranges from 0 to original amount. Can't use actives. Okay, so corrupting a seed basically locks it from having any upgrades, and it can't use its actives. That's a bit poop. Although Fern doesn't have actives, River doesn't have actives. Okay, so we're not ruining our Fern and River synergy by having that in the deck so far. So let's go again. More growth on that. Yeah, filling up the whole garden is very, very difficult. Right, we're going to till the soil. I need to not keep randomly re-rolling the craft, because I did that last time and it wasn't very helpful. The duck returns non-water seeds to the pouch, which allows us to play them more than once, I think. I'm not really sure how that works in practice, but it's cool. It's a cool idea, and it has the keyword water on it, so I'm going to keep playing that way. Right, that color load random seed, so that got rid of the one that we just had here, so we put another one there. So the water is allowing you to kind of double dip by like getting rid of things and making the space for something else. That does mean that we need to make sure we use actives earlier and not wait until the end, because sometimes you're going to cull an active, and you could have used the active, then culled it with the water, and then had something else come out in the space. So that's something to watch out for. Let's get another water and another fern plant. I feel like we've actually got a chance of that synergy being a thing now, because we've got 2 of each, so... Okay. Oh, we drew a water, and then we drew another water after, and then the water culled the other water. I think corruption isn't permanent. I think it might just be for that draw or season or whatever we want to call it, but I'm not sure. Okay. Let's see what's in the booster. Okay, is that water? Rotten log, water decay. Gain fert for each other water seed. Oh, that's good for us. Let's do it. I think my mouse is getting sleepy. Return non-water seeds to the pouch. I should have done that before using wild growth, really. We're going to do that, and then we get a draw again. Don't know how beneficial it is to draw again. Yeah, okay, so that's going to give us for each water seed, and we've got a water there. So if we draw our other water... No, okay. Interesting. I think this is going to end up going in my engine building video. I'm currently in the process of working on a video about engine building in games. I'm toying with the idea of it just being a song, though. Because I think it'd be funny. If the next seed in the pouch is water, cull it for 4 nurch, else load it. Hi, Dabu. There's usually at least one of these a week, sometimes 2 or 3. Yeah, the YouTube homepage for the channel usually has them up the top. They change time every week, unfortunately, but that's just the nature of what I do. There's a lot. I need to move things around a lot for family and other bits of work I do, so... We're gonna do it. If the next seed in the pouch is... Okay. I'm not sure about this duck guy. He's a little trickster, the duck. Like I'm using the active. I'm putting everything, taking everything off the board that's not water. I'm not sure if it's helping me. Yeah, Bernard, the actives currently have an A, which is maybe not clear enough. Yeah, I think we might just go completely off the deep end this summer, and I'll just do videos that are just like a 5-minute song about something. Really, it's like, why is this guy making a rock opera called There Is No Such Thing as a Steam Meta? Game for each bush. This is a bush, right? I can't go back there and check. We're gonna get a hawk. Okay, wild growth on that one. Okay, I'm putting out there. It's so hard. We've got 16 days left. I'm not getting anything this time. I'm just going to till the soil. I'm worried that if I talk about engine building game mechanics, I will get the same thing that I got with the video about gameplay loops, where lots of 60-year-old men who've only ever made games as a programming exercise want to tell me about game loops in computer science as if I don't know what that is. Because you'll get the same thing with engine building. Oh, I thought this was going to be about building your own game engine. Why do words mean different things in different contexts? I bet you couldn't even build your own game engine. English is very stupid. We should invent a new language that works for everyone and make everyone use it. And then we're all going to go and live in Brasilia as well. The fake capital of Brazil that no one moved to. Oh, I want to build my own game engine. I'm going to get another duck. And purchase a booster. Cull seeds beside the owl. If the next seed in the pouch... I think that the reason I'm struggling with the culling mechanic is that it's just like ripping up loads of stuff I've done and I haven't scored it. I think if more things scored when they came out, then culling would make sense because it's like, I'll get to double dip. I get to score that thing and then get rid of it and then put something else down. But culling everything of a category is just like, I don't have much control over it and I rarely understand whether the things that replace it are going to be better than what was already there. Cull all birds, I guess. We've got lots of stuff culling things. But how does it benefit me? I'm not sure. Whoa, okay. Till the soil again. Let's just see what this is. Use on a seed to clear its rot. No. We're going to till the soil. Tilling the soil is the prime directive. Return non-animal seeds to the pouch. Okay, I'm going to get a bison. Loaded. 1 in 6 chance to gain nert equal to days left. Oh, that's interesting. Let's get an orchid. Oh, the rocks. When it says score, does that mean it scores everything that you've played so far? Okay, rocks are good. Rocks rock. I mean, dev of this game, I know you're in the chat. Or you were. Hopefully there's some positive stuff in this playtest where you're seeing someone have loads of nice aha moments. I think what your focus needs to be over the next couple of months or however long you're working on this is just making sure all of the other aspects of the game make it easier for someone to get to those aha moments. Because the aha moments I'm having here are really great, but are most people going to stick around for an hour to get to that point? And what are the things you could do to make sure it's easier for them to get there? And I don't think those things are build a tutorial, right? I think it's very easy for people to go, oh, people don't understand the game. They need a tutorial. And maybe they need a tutorial at some point. But I think the kind of stuff we've talked about with UX and keywords and making it clear you can right click to get keywords and like the stuff you do with the art and the sound to make the game satisfying to play, that's the stuff that pulls people along so that they can get to that point where they go, ah, this game, that I'm in the strategy of the game now and I understand it a bit more and I'm starting to feel clever. Because that's the experience people want from any sort of thinky strategic game. They want the game to make them feel clever, but they have to get to the point where they're engaged enough to start to understand things for themselves and start to like learn things. Otherwise, they'll just never get there. Yeah. Yeah, all of the stuff you should prioritize before a tutorial was just like how intuitive is the basic thing without a tutorial. We can spec into wild roses, which will trigger off each other, but if we start doing that, we're going to have to get lots of them. Tulips need to be exactly beside each other to score off of each other. The sunflower clears rots from seeds, and if there is no rot, cull the sunflower. That's pretty good. That's pretty helpful. It does take fertilizer away, but we're going to try it. Okay, let's go for that. Yeah, kind of the reason why lots of videos say the same thing is because people aren't actually interested in making videos to help people. They're interested in making videos that people will click on. And that's something that's you know, obviously I want people to click on my videos and I want lots of people to watch them, but I'd much rather make a video that 500 people watched that was exactly what they needed versus a video that 50,000 people watch and like goes over their heads or tells them something they already know. But I think whatever incentive structure is built up around your channel, whether it's something that just naturally comes from YouTube or it's something that you've created for yourself because you're like, you know, I'll come back to it again. If you're selling a course and it's a very expensive course and not many people buy it, then you want as many people to be at the top end of that funnel as possible. So that creates an incentive structure where you need to just start repeating the same basic stuff over and over again because that's what appeals to new people and that's what they're likely to click on. And if everyone does a video about make small games, then you need to do it as well because all of the newbies are going to be sitting there clicking through every video about that, waiting for the one that tells them what they want to hear. And the incentive structure, either for selling a course or for selling doing as much AdSense revenue as you can, or for like doing partnerships, right? All leads you down that road of like wanting to make stuff that appeals to as many people as possible and gets the clicks. It's the system, man. But it's also a choice of like how to use the platform. Okay, we've got another river, or no, we've got another water thing. I'm not going to do this in 9 days. It's so hard. I don't think the difficulty is necessarily a bad thing, though. I think maybe you want to give people an easily winnable scenario at some point. But the way that the game is structured currently is just like, you know, it's a random set of things that you can play with each time. Oh. So I put a bunch of stuff back in the deck. Again, I haven't scored anything that I drew, so I don't know how that benefits me to do that. It's just kind of fun to get to keep drawing. Do it again. I guess when you've got more of the thing cleared, then doing this becomes more useful because you might reach a stage where you're at 2 strikes and you want to keep building, but you're in danger, so that's when you would use the culls. But they don't seem to be that useful this early in the game. It's like, I'm not really getting anything out of doing that. That was good. That got me an extra space. Right, I think we need to invest in whatever's going to give us fert now. That's why we've slowed down. So I didn't really build into anything that gives us fert. Give me the fert. I think part of the issue you're describing as well, Connor, is that the people that are genuinely interested in design theory are much more... They're less susceptible to needing things to be shiny and new and like presented in a kind of parasocial way. They don't necessarily need to have like a YouTuber that can gradually become their like internet friend or whatever, which is what a lot of people kind of expect from YouTube and from Twitch. So, because I think the people that are like a little bit more thoughtful and want to understand game design theory for the sake of it are much more likely to like watch a GDC talk from 10 years ago or read a gamedeveloper.com article or, you know, watch old, I don't know, like old extra credits videos, stuff like that. Like the kind of need for the thing to be new and relevant to something happening right now kind of goes away because I think the people who are already at that level of thinking about game design are going to understand that it's not necessarily, oh, I need to learn about this current trend and this particular type of game that's hot right now, because most of it is much more, you know, principles that have been around for a long time, or things that you could learn. You can learn things from games that came out 20 years ago or 40 years ago. So there's like the people that want everything to be presented to them as if it's the new cheat code for Steam are much more in line with how with what works for YouTube and what works for the incentive structure for new YouTubers. I think it's something like that is going on. I love an ancient GDC video. And if anything, they're kind of, I think watching those things helps you. It's very easy to, like, I think lots of people come to game dev with a very sneering attitude towards game developers because of how gamer culture is about game developers and game development. It's like, oh, I'd make better decisions about this, blah, blah, blah. So it's very easy to watch, like, GDC talks and be like, oh, they don't know what they're talking about. But, and I've definitely watched some and felt that. But that should be, like, a freeing feeling, because the number one cure for imposter syndrome is to realize that no one really knows what they're doing. That doesn't mean that it's not helpful to like listen to them, but I think there's a generally dismissive thing where people either think, oh, you know, I could make better games than these people, so I'm not going to listen to them. Or they think, oh, well, I'm going to make indie games, so the person that worked in this AAA context or this free-to-play context doesn't have anything to tell me that could help me there. And it's like, well, obviously there are some things that are very unique to very small projects or to the culture of indie games, but there are also lots of things that are universal and apply to lots of different contexts. Cull the birds. So I'm going to have to end this and move on to the next game. I'm finding it very, very hard, but it is that kind of compelling difficulty where it makes me want to get better at the game. I would say that one of the things that another good sign here is that even though I'm kind of hitting that defeatist moment where I'm like, well, there's no point because I've got 4 days left and I've only filled up half the book. I'm hitting that defeatist, like, taking a long time to lose problem again. But as I hit it, I've had a realization about what I was doing wrong, which was that I didn't spec into building the economy for the fertilizer, the yellow resource, early enough in that match. So again, when you watch people playtest, encourage them to think out loud, because it can be very helpful to notice these things. Because someone going, oh, this game is too hard. Okay, that's one type of data, and you take it with a pinch of salt. But if the person is thinking out loud and they're going, oh, this game is too hard, but then they're also having these reflections about, oh, I should have done this, so next time I'll do this, then that's an excellent sign. Because yes, the game may be too difficult, but also, you know, the game was too difficult because the player wasn't doing the right thing, and the game is intuitive or self-explanatory enough that the player has reached that conclusion about what they should do next time for themselves, right? So that's an incredibly helpful thing to look for. And I'm not... and I'm saying that because, like, obviously when I'm doing these streams, I think aloud a lot, because that's the whole point. But I'm thinking aloud to help you identify what is going on in the mind of the player, which is, you know, it's helpful for action games at the level of like understanding someone's emotions. But when you're making like a very abstract, thinky strategy game like this, you need to hear people think through their turns and their learnings and like, what am I doing at the moment? What am I trying to achieve? Oh no, I'm losing. Okay, I'm losing, but what would I do differently the next time? And I think if people come away from losing a game and they have a clear sense of what they need to do differently next time, then when you use that data point, you know, you think about that in relationship to any complaints they have about the game being too difficult. Because, okay, they experienced it as too difficult, but they also learned something. So was it really too difficult? If they try it again and they try to apply that knowledge they got from the last round of, oh, I need to do this with my economy, and they still find it too difficult, then maybe that's the point where you need to think about the difficulty. But if the complaint is this is too difficult, but I learned this, and next time I'm going to do this, then maybe it's not too difficult. Maybe those things are linked in a way that's not immediately obvious. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with that. I really like that game. I still have, reservations about the way that it makes best use of the theme of building a garden, and sometimes I just think that the obvious thing of tiles should look like a place is just too much of an opportunity to miss out on. But I do like the kind of chilled out kind of Encarta encyclopedia vibe of it is very cool, and it's a shame that the music stopped looping after the first time. We're going to check out Tiles and Vials. I don't know how long I'll be playing this one for. I want to make sure that the other game gets some time as well. This one looks interesting. I've played some stuff like this before where, again, it's a bag builder. So it's kind of like a deck builder, but rather than it being a... Well, we'll see how it works because I haven't actually played this one yet. Okay, we're going to play the tutorial of 3 levels. Okay, let me just go back to the Steam page for a moment and see how it describes itself as well, because I think that could be helpful. It's described as a roguelike. It's described as a deck builder. Tiles instead of cards. Okay, we're doing merging. We're doing match 3, and presumably the set of tiles that are in the matching game are the things that we are kind of modifying or changing over the course of the game. I think I played something a few months ago that had almost exactly the same mechanics as this. Okay, so we're doing like a hover a tile to see its effect. So I'm pressing WAS to like... I move all of them in that direction. Is that right? So if I press right now, the green one will go across. Right, okay. Or is it the... So the new tile is this one? Is that what happens? Yeah, a level 1 will be spawned here. So if I press right, everything's going to move over to the right, and that's the new tile that's coming in, which is going to be replaced from here. This training dummy can attack back. Hover over the icon above his head to see what he can do. The dummy will take his action whenever you run out of energy. I like these guys. These sort of like pixelated down 3D models. There is a lot of slight strangeness going on with what's pixel art, what isn't type stuff. And I know I'm not really one to talk because my game has a lot of clashing styles, but I think it's a lot easier to get away with it if you're going for something that is deliberately a bit psychedelic and stupid looking, whereas this looks like it's, taking itself seriously trad fantasy, which I feel like you need to make sure things feel a little bit more cohesive and polished if that's what you're going for. But I do like the way the battle is rendered at the top. Yeah, so kind of said there's a lot of white space. Yeah, absolutely. And by that we mean negative space in the UI design, right? So there's... Everything is kind of taking up the whole screen to the edge. And the focal point is in the right place. This is what I'm focusing on. Why does this go all the way over here? Why does this go all the way over here? Why is this right up to the top of the screen? That kind of stuff. I'm going to show... Let's look at Slay the Spire quickly. Well, no, actually, let's look at Peglin, because it's probably closer to what you're doing here. Right? How many things are actually right up to the edge? Right, the list of relics is, and they have a similar thing in Hades, don't they, where you gather the relics and they go down the side. And that's because this is the most passive information that you are probably only looking at every couple of minutes. But most of the stuff, if you look, there's like an inch around the screen that things don't go into, right? The money is in the safe area. Again, it's passive. We don't look at it very often. We don't need to see this. We don't need to think about it very often. The forest floor 11, we don't need to think about that very often. These options, not important because they're mainly there to remind you what these keyboard shortcuts do. What does the I key do? What does the F key do? What does the escape key do? Right? All of the stuff that we're actually playing with it is within the safe area. It's got like this inch bar around it. The combat has, you know, the decorative stuff is still there, but the actual combat is, you know, below that safe area. So if you imagine like a big kind of chunky inch wide border around the screen, there's stuff in that border, but it's either like the decorative background of the combat, or it's like icons and things that we probably are not looking at constantly, and we only need to look at once every 5 minutes or something like that. Everything else that's important happens within this kind of safe area at the center of the screen. And that means your eyes aren't moving around a lot. And it also means you avoid the kind of dead areas where people's eyes generally don't tend to look. So if you look at the Z reading pattern, which is this kind of like, this is graphic design, really basic graphic design stuff that anyone working in a visual medium should understand. There are these two areas called the primary optical area. You start reading up in the top left, you go across, and then there are these kind of weaker areas at the top right and the bottom left. And the call to action always goes at the bottom right. That's because that's where your eyes stop reading an image. And it's also because in left to right languages, the bottom right, the right is perceived as being like next. This is stuff that everyone making video games should know. It's really, really basic graphic design and UX stuff. And as soon as I see a game like what we've got on the screen right now, where things are going like these characters are like right up to the edge of the screen here. So we want to bring this line down. We're gonna do it straight away. We're gonna camera it. I'm sorry that this session has been so much about graphic design, but we have to like focus on the stuff that people are weak at, I think, and like the stuff where there's easy wins. Because I mean, I can't screenshot that, so I'm not gonna bother with that right now. But sometimes you look at a game and you see stuff that's wrong with it, and you think, well, the way to solve this would be to rebuild the whole game, you know? And it's like, that's not helpful feedback to give people. If someone wants to improve a game they've already made, then we look for easy wins. And the easy wins here are, you know, this bar representing the combat, you know, the bottom of it probably needs to come down here. We should have a little bit of overhead space for the enemies because they're important and we want to see them. This icon shouldn't be in the area that we would normally think of as the safe area, because this is contextual information about the current battle we're in, right? So the fact that this is asleep and this guy's going to deal 2 damage, that should be kind of around about this area, right? It should be in that central part of the screen that lets us know that it's important and like spares us having to search around the edge for things. Yeah, like all of these things, just nudge them into the middle. Upcoming tiles, maybe this could be smaller so we can fit it in here. I don't know. It's not really about where things go exactly. It's about having some rules about where things do and don't go, and then having some rationale. Some of the rationale you've just kind of brought over from other games, right? Our character is on the left, the enemies are on the right. The direction of travel from the player to the enemies is left to right. That just usually makes sense as a convention in Western games. That's why when you play JRPGs, it often goes right to left. The characters are going right to left. Most Japanese games, the direction of travel is right to left. That's the direction of like storytelling in that culture. And you'll see games like Mario where it's like Japanese devs making a game that they are targeting Americans with, where they flip it round because they were aware of that even in the 1980s, right? So direction of travel matches up with direction of reading in UX, in web design, in game layouts. So the fact you've got the player character on the left shows that you understand some of these conventions. You know, we're attacking left to right, but we've got some other conventions that we're missing out on, and that's basically not having a safe area and just having like, look, the artifacts are like taking up loads of space here, and do they need to be that big? Let's see what they do. So we're going to click on one to activate it. Instantly spawns 3 upcoming tiles. Cooldown 3 turns. Swap the position of 2 tiles around. Cooldown 5 turns. Consume your current armor to deal damage equal to it. Cooldown 3 turns. So these are like permanent powers that have some sort of limitation on them. They're like hero powers in Hearthstone. They're not actually like relics in Slay the Spire because they're not like passive engine building things that just change the condition of the fight. They're not like jokers in Balatro where it's like, when this happens, now this happens. Because those sorts of things, it's like they add a passive rule to the game or they break one of the existing rules. And then your goal as a player, rather than to like actively use the thing as a hero power, your goal as a player then is to think about creating conditions that trigger that relic or trigger that joker. These aren't. These are more like, you know, spells that a unit would have in an MMO or something like that. So again, where would that normally go in that kind of interface? Well, if these were my spells and I was playing an RTS or an MMO, they would probably be down here or down here. Not so sure, but again, we're going right up to the edge here. This is like, this is going into the last 5% of the screen, so be wary of all of that kind of stuff. Consume your current armor to deal damage equal to it. I don't have any armor, I don't think. Just click an artifact to activate it. Choose 2 tiles to swap with another tile. Oh, it's to swap with each other, I think. Not sure I understand that one. Right, let's get into the flow of the actual game. Someone said the game that this is based on is called 3, which I don't think I've actually played. Oh, I see. When you bring something onto the thing that's the same as it, it upgrades that. Oh dear, I wasn't expecting you to get stuck this fast. Well, this once I will help you out, but don't expect me to be this generous all the time. Once you wake up, you'll be removing 3 tiles of your choosing from the board. Best of luck. I'm not sure what's going on with this art style. I cannot tell if this is jaggy-filled pixel art because we've taken one form of art and tried to convert it into pixel art. That's the most generous read I can give of what's going on with the art here, but I'm not sure if that is actually what's happening. The reason, like, I don't want to get into an AI rant today, but there are lots of the qualities here of a game where someone has tried to use AI for everything. And maybe that's not what the case is, but the thing, the inconsistency is the thing. And part of it just comes down to like workflow. You know, if I was someone who could make these cool little 3D pixelated characters in the corners at the top of the screen, and that was like a set of skills I had, why would I then also be putting this kind of a bit wonky looking pixel art character in the same game? It doesn't make sense as the output of a person or a set of people that we've got these different art styles and they don't feel like they've come from the same person. I think that's the thing that bothers me, and that's the thing that starts to set off my Blade Runner senses a little bit. And again, it's like, I don't want to lambast people for thinking they've used the technology or for no one should ever use it, but the output that it produces feels inconsistent. And maybe that's not what happens here. Maybe what's happened here is just an inconsistent set of rules about everything. But yeah, I mean, this is not what good... This is actually quite a good image, but look at all of these jaggies. And I'm not the best pixel artist in the world, but I can see where there's stuff here that just... This wasn't made as pixel art, you know? Don't expect me to be this generous all the time. Once you wake up, you'll be able to remove 3 tiles of your choosing through the board. Okay, you're helping me out. Thank you. Let's remove that, that, and that. And... yeah, it just feels a bit off. It's like there's just lots of things that have been approached differently art-wise, and then we've got these items that are like higher res. And again, I'm doing the same thing in my game. I have a mix of... I have a mix of stuff done in Procreate and a mix of stuff with pixel art. So, like, I can't, you know, talk with authority on that, but I do know when it feels like it's not the same color palette and it's not the same person creating the imagery, you know, because these are the actual tiles look like they're from some sort of asset set that you used to get of like RPG abilities and items and stuff like that, and they haven't been treated so that they have the same kind of color range as the rest of the game either. Okay, we're going to be the adventurer. Going to confirm. Again, stuff is right down into the corners again. Okay, tile selection. Sword and food. So this is how we would change the way that our run feels each time. I can't use any artifacts because we haven't unlocked anything. So I kind of said what's the input in the game. You press left, right, up or down and everything slides in that direction, including the new tile. So if I press right now, the top sword will slide along to the right and this one will spawn in where it says it's going to spawn in like that. Although it didn't. Right, so it says a level 1 sword will be spawned here. Okay. Okay, so the things don't spawn if you cover them up. So if you've got a tile coming in that you don't want, you can like deliberately cover it up. I find the actual base interaction very confusing. And then... Okay, we level things up by getting them next to the same thing, I think. So yeah, if you want the new thing to spawn in, you have to not cover it up when you move everything else. I think that's the... And we've got some very like casual mobile game looking coins that have been pixelated and they're not the same color or design as the ones up here. But just make sure I just get the colors right. You know, you can have different style assets, but this is yellow and brown and white. This is yellow and orange. Like, just get the colors consistent with each other. Yeah, when the similar things merge, they become like another level up, and then they have like the different color backgrounds of that thing. So if I press up here, this sword's going to slide up. This sword will appear, which is our next tile, and then we'll have 3 in a row. So then the sword will level up to a more powerful thing, I think. Oh, it's not happened now. Okay. The food did level up though, so I'm not sure what's happening. I merged them. Okay, so if I go right again, I'll merge a sword into a sword. But I think we can only merge a green sword into a green sword. So you can deliberately slide things to merge together the things you want to, but they have to be the right level. Okay, there we go. We've got a blue sword now. Okay, cool. Starting to get a feel for how the merging works. I think what might have happened here is that the dev sort of assumes that people understand this game mechanic from playing 3s. But then how does that necessarily transfer to liking the kind of fantasy combat setting? I'm not sure. I think that might be a little bit of a jump there. That way, green into green. We've got 2 blue swords now. We can make a really big blue sword, I think. Or we can merge some food and make a bigger food. So every time I make a merge, the thing triggers, right? So when I merge my grey swords into a green sword, I do a little bit of damage. When I merge my green swords into a blue sword, I do a big bit of damage. Same with the food. I get health back when I merge the food in particular ways. That's all neat. That feels really good. It takes a few tries to really get an understanding of how the merging works. I didn't feel like the tutorial really helped me. And I know I was talking about other things, but I felt like the tutorial didn't really help me to understand that mechanic. And I think some of it is that you're just telling people how the mechanic works, and maybe assuming that people have played a game with these same base mechanics before, which I think as soon as you're into like Steam Dark Fantasy Land may not be the case if it's based on a mobile game. I'm going to pick gold because I don't really care for having to think about how the relics work, because until I've like mastered the basic game mechanic, I don't care about the artifacts and having another additional ability to think about. Upgrade an inventory tile. Yeah, give me a better starting sword. It's cool. I kind of like this. I have reservations about what's going on with the art. But once you know how it works, it kind of feels reasonably compelling. We've got food coming in now, so just try not to squish your good stuff. Right, we're getting snaked. Getting snaked up over here. Trying to get these swords to merge is not an easy thing. There we go. I'm merging my food. Stop attacking me. I'm trying to merge my food. Oof. Yeah, it's run based, and you are changing the tiles as you go through. I think what we need to watch out for is whether the changing of the tiles feels significant enough, because I think that the thing that I tend to look for, and I think this is representative of like fans of roguelikes generally, right? If you were making one of these and your goal was like, hey, I want Northern Line to play my game eventually, then this would be the same thing, is that they are fundamentally about engine building, right? So how quickly do I get to a point, how quickly do I get to the point where the identity of one run feels different from the last run? And that's a mixture of what's different about the things I encounter, which is probably not as important. I know in traditional roguelikes it's all about the world being generated each time, and that's what's different. But what is it in the player's toolset that feels different after like doing the first two combats and making some choices? Because in this case, if it's just, do I upgrade my sword or do I upgrade my food, that's not going to make the actual piloting of the game feel considerably different from turn to turn. Whereas in like Balatro, having 2 or 3 different jokers can dramatically change the way the game plays, and that's because that you're really kind of changing the core interaction rules of the games, or changing the coming back to incentive structures, which was we were talking about in relation to YouTube. But you're changing the incentive structure of how the player wants to use the basic parts of the game, right? If you're saying every time you use a card with a 7 on it, or every time you attack, now this thing happens, then the run is going to have a very different identity from the previous run. Whereas if we're just upgrading the core components of our attack cards or our food cards, there's usually going to be like a right answer to always go for, and it's not an interesting decision anymore. So what I will do now is start paying attention to the artifacts and start using the artifacts, because in this game it may be that those are where the different run identity comes from. And that is the make or break thing in roguelikes. Whether it's like a super strategy roguelike or an action roguelike, or more of like a pachinko type, like one of these dropping objects into a thing and they all score points, or the omelette game I played recently. Wherever it sits on the spectrum, the core thing usually ends up being this engine building and how does it contribute to each run feeling different. Not on the whole, but from the beginning. Like, how quickly into the run does my build start to feel different from my build last time? And you can build all these characters and you can say, oh, you unlock the adventurer and then the necromancer and then the ranger or whatever. But by that point, it's taken too long for the game to feel different each time. So I think that's what we're looking out for. And yeah, kind of thanks for bringing that to my attention, because it's just to make explicit what I'm looking for and what I think people are generally looking for when they play a roguelike. Choose where the next 2 tiles are spawned. Cooldown 4 turns. Apply 2 poison to the first enemy. Upgrade a tile in inventory. I'm usually gonna go for the passive stuff when I'm struggling with the core mechanics of a game. I'm usually gonna go for the stuff that doesn't require me to like think and look for a context too much. We're gonna go to the shop. Welcome to my humble shop, traveler. Hover over any of my wares and I will tell you more about them. Instantly spawns 3 upcoming tiles. Okay, so that's like a rushes our tiles in. The Vampiric Cup. Gain health equal to the damage dealt this turn. Cooldown 5 turns. Okay. You really have to look for when is a good time to use these. That's a okay thing, I guess. Reset the cooldown of all other artifacts. I'm going to go for the... no, I'll go for the one that lets you choose where the things go. That seems like it could be helpful. We'll just go with that for now, because it's going to take me a while to learn how to pilot it. So, okay, we're going to choose where the next 2 tiles are spawned. I'll trigger that now. So... Are we spawned to be moving around with the cursor right now? So I'm going to click over there. Yeah, okay. So this needs to follow the cursor when we're using this ability. This is incredibly misleading, the way that this is presented currently. Okay. So I've got 4 more turns and then that comes back. Okay, that kind of makes sense. So I need to watch for when this cooldown runs out, and I need to use that as soon as I can each time. And then that kind of raises the question of, is there ever a time where you don't want to use this as much as possible? And if so, why is it inactive, you know? But I don't want to, like, preempt issues that we haven't experienced yet. That's a lie. Whenever I ever not wanted to preempt issues we haven't experienced yet. I feel like I've seen that crab somewhere else, but... I don't mind people using assets. Just as long as it feels consistent. But I think my approach to using assets has always been like, I'm going to use them as a base. At some point, I'm going to branch off and start editing them to make my own style. And that's why it's important to like use assets that are in a style that I can edit myself, you know? And I think it's fine for people to use assets for whatever reason, but I think you also need to be honest that people aren't going to, like, be super attached to your game if it doesn't feel like it has its own unique kind of voice or whatever. Your luck has run out because you filled up the grid, I think. Okay, so we choose a negative effect to clear the grid. That's interesting. Lose 1 extra health whenever you're damaged. Your maximum energy reduced by 1. Any gold you gain in the future. Okay, we'll go for the take extra damage. I don't even know what energy is. I haven't seen an energy mechanic. Oh, that's this. Each move requires 1 energy once you run out your turn. So, okay, so this is how many moves I make before. Again, like, why here? You know, put this on the grid. Put it. You could make these smaller, and they could just be like along the top. And they're counting down so you can see what they relate to. I don't know. Choose 4 tiles to remove from the board. I'm going to remove these foods so that I have a better chance of linking these attacks together. And those ones. Okay, here we go. That way. Big sword. Chopper to chop. Yeah, the lose state's not very satisfying here. Getting the grid fill and then we're like dying but being given a chance to sort of take a handicap to not die type thing. That's what's happening there. Okay. Food there. Sword there. And we're gonna die again. Fill the grid up. Okay. Yeah, I think they've hit the design problem of like what happens when you fill up the grid. And I'm not entirely sure that choose one of these 3 negative effects is the best response to that. it feels like it breaks the flow in a way that's kind of a little bit... Okay, we're gonna use the axe, powerful berserker attacks at the cost of your own health. So one thing that we can definitely say is like a cool thing here is I've finished one run, I've immediately got new options unlocked, so when I play it's going to be different, right? That's good. That's kind of a structurally strong thing. Feels like they understand the space that they're working in when I see that kind of thing, you know? Okay, food. Food. Merge the axes. Merge those two axes together. There we go. I think maybe there need to be more sub-conditions that clear parts of the board, because the way that it's filling up is just like really... Well, I think I just realised what happened. I think mechanically what happened that led to that situation was because I added another tile type to the deck, because I added the poison tile. The poison vial was the thing that was causing the grid to fill up, because I had less merge opportunities. So you basically got this balancing lever or vector that's like a key thing. Like the tile variety in your deck in this game can completely like make the difficulty of the matching ramp up so far, in theory, that you end up with that situation. So the problem there is that now that I've recognized that, it seems like the best strategy is to only ever have two things in my deck. And that might be wrong, but it feels like that's what the game has just taught me about how to play it, is to just never actually pick a third tile type. Ruined Necklace, remove a single tile from the board. Okay, that's a good one. That's going to help us solve a problem we had last time. I need to remember to use this. Choose where the next two tiles go. That will go with its friend. And that will go there. And then we'll slide to the left. And up. And up again. And up again. And left. Left. Green axe into green axe. Right again. Down to get these grey axes together. Yeah, I'm not really looking at the battle at the top at all. Occasionally check it for the health bars. I think what I would do is bring the top line of the battle down to like just above the game grid, and then have the energy mechanic for the swiping be like down the side here as well, so everything is just tighter around the actual play space. Not sure we need the inventory to be this massive either. It's like, this is looking at our deck in a deck builder, and that's usually like an optional screen. We're treating lots of information here as if it needs to be available all the time, and I'm not sure it does. Sometimes this happens a little bit when you're a little bit too focused on showcasing the complexity of your game, rather than focusing on like giving the player a good experience by making sure you're not distracting them with things they don't need to think about at that moment. Doing a treasure room level, fine. I'm always happy to have a treasure room level. Building some of these myself at the moment. Yeah, I forgot to. Okay, we'll use our artifacts. We're spawning a food here. We're spawning an axe here. We're spawning another food. Yeah, I think that adding a tile type just makes the game exponentially hard in a way that might not be worth it for most situations. Yeah, I mean the artifacts aren't positioned like again, look at where hero powers are placed in. I would do a review of MOBAs, like RTS games, CCGs like Hearthstone. Where are the hero powers positioned? Probably not in the sort of top right, the middle of the center bit of the top right corner. Almost not. Almost never. CRPGs like Baldur's Gate, that's probably a good reference point as well. And this is really stuff that, you know, you can kind of intuit by looking at games, but generally speaking, the stuff that the player can do and does regularly is usually at the bottom side of the screen because we have an association with that being closer to us, right? So the situation we're reacting to is in the top and the center middle top, and the stuff that we're doing is at the bottom. And some games that's more obvious because, like, if we're playing cards, then the cards are at the bottom of the screen, but it's the same principle. The cards are in our hand, we're the player, and as a, you know, our physical relationship to the screen is we are sitting in it, like at the bottom of the screen, right? And then the screen often has a fake depth to it, whether it's a 2D game or a 3D game, where the top of the screen is further away from us than the bottom of the screen. So the stuff that is our kind of tools as a player is positioned in the center middle, and the stuff that's at the top is stuff that we don't need to look at or use as much, and the stuff that's like at the top in the middle is like the situation we're reacting to. And it's the same as a first-person shooter, right? Our gun is at the bottom, our gun is close to us, our gun is part of our body as a character. The thing that we're projecting force into and reacting is the center of the screen, which is like further away from us. It's the same principle. It's the same principle for like a racing game. It's the same principle if you look at the way that an interface for like a MOBA or an RTS is designed. It's all the same stuff. And yeah, these artifacts don't belong over here in any of those situations. So just, you know, this is stuff you could learn from a textbook, but it's also stuff you could just learn from looking at games, assuming that they know what they're doing, and then trying to work out why they did it that way. Potent spices, double health recovery during this turn. Oh, that's cool. That levels up our health things for that turn. So, welcome to my humble shop, traveler. We get a rune necklace. We can get a demonic axe. 3 offensive tiles are spawned. Explosive tonic instantly spawns 4 level 1 bomb tiles. That's fun. Let's go with the bomb and a double damage. Okay. Right, really need to pay attention to these now. Right, we need to merge health as quickly as possible because we're starting to run out. so I've only got 1 energy left. So this is where it's starting to get a little bit thinkier. Right, this turn, I'm going to use the spices and merge that health. So now we should get more health because we got this little buff. So we get 8. Great. Now that we've got a few different artifacts, I understand how to use them. The relationship between this part of the game and the kind of Slay the Spire type stuff where we're doing all of these little buffs and stuff starts to feel good. But because these are all so active, it takes a little while to get to the point where you understand enough of the base rules to be able to use these. So there's like quite a big hurdle for people to get over between just like being able to play the base game and then being able to use the artifacts. And I think once you're over that, it starts to really feel cool. You know, all of the kind of UI issues aside, now that I've got these and I'm kind of can scroll through them and go, oh, what can I use next? It starts to feel really good, but there's quite a long path to get there. Okay, now this turn we're going to get double damage attacks. Let's choose where the next 2 tiles are spawned as well. And then we're going to try and merge those green axes. And up. Merge those foods. Okay, we're gonna merge two top level foods and 2 top level axes at the same time. When I slide right, that's gonna go into that, and that's going to go to that. So we don't need the spices because our health isn't that low. We can't use any of the other upgrades right now. So if I had the double damage now, this would be a great time to use it. And if I had low health, this would be a great time to use the spices, but I don't. So we'll just poof. There we go. Book of the Future. Connor was saying in the chat the battle looks a bit dull. Yeah, it does. I mean, it feels very much like we've got a bunch of assets from somewhere and we've put them in there, and it's like, okay, it kind of does its job, but it's not super exciting. Apply 1 poison to the first enemy. That's a tile, right? Right, I'm going to get a 3rd tile just because I want to test the theory. So we're going to get a poison dagger tile, and now I theorize that the game is going to get way harder because the tile doesn't come up frequently enough and it blocks the space. I do have something to mitigate that. I do have my bone necklace that lets me remove stuff, so I need to bear that in mind. And maybe when the difficult tile comes up, the dagger, which I can't get as many of, so it's harder for me to place, that's maybe when I need to use my book to decide where things go. Okay, we're going to do some extra damage now, so that when I'm merging these, we're getting extra value out of it. Probably need to do the food upgrade next turn. I can merge these 2 daggers. Right. And again, I'm getting that sensation that we talked about before of, like, I feel like I'm getting better at the game. Right? And that's, like, the single most important thing that you can see happen in playtests for any sort of skill-based games. Is I gradually do feel like I'm getting better. I'm making better choices. So the game must be doing something right in terms of, you know, it's not doing a lot of teaching in terms of explicit tutorial, but in terms of, like, opportunities to learn, I guess. Right, we can spawn 4 level bomb tiles, and they will spawn in exactly the right place to match with each other because of the way that the grid is already full up. So let's do that. That's going to do 10 damage to all enemies, so it's going to kill them both when that goes off. But I don't have any way of detonating that now. Because I don't... Oh, I would have to... Oh, it has no cooldown and 2 uses. Okay, so the bomb thing is great. I should be using that more often. Interesting. Okay. We're going to clear something off the board with this. So let's get rid of... We've got a green axe coming in next. So we want a space here. Let's get rid of that, unfortunately. And then we choose where it goes, and it goes there. And then we can merge that way. Ooh. It goes there, and is there a move I can make? I think there is, because it's not telling me I've failed. There we go. Okay. Yeah, I think most of the problems this game has is just like the developer is doing their best with the aesthetics and like the visual communication stuff, but the layout is bad. The art is salvageable, but I think it really needs to let's upgrade that tile so that they come in green. The art is salvageable, but I think it really, if you're going to use all of these assets and like these pixel art icons and this stuff that's like, yeah, I think you need to try and make the color palette more coherent across all of those things, and then the clashing styles would probably not be quite so bad. Okay, bombs. Bombs, you love to spawn them. Guys, come on. Right, I did a little health boost thing there so that we would be able to survive this round. We're going to spawn an axe here. We're going to spawn the other axe here. We're going to merge them. Off. I'm going to do the double damage thing. Put those together. I think we've lost it. I don't think I know. Hang on. Bomb. Right, we've only got one that's going to attack us now. So maybe if I do the bombs like that, and if we can get some of this food merged together, and those knives. Mate, stop it. Stop biting me. Right, I need to do something to allow me to heal. Let's get rid of that axe. Go down that way. Spices to double health recovery. Merge those two green foods together. Okay, we're still in the game. This is difficult, but it's a kind of satisfying type of difficult, so I'm kind of happy with it so far. Right, we've got a blocked grid. I don't like this solution to the grid falling up. I think there's a better one. I just couldn't tell you what it is right now while I'm focused on playing the game. Choose 4 tiles to remove. Okay. We want to remove the stuff that stops us linking our good things. Let's just get rid of all of those. Right. That one. Bombs. That was really difficult. I don't have 4 tile types, but I have bombs that I can spawn from one of my artifacts, which do clog up a lot of the board. But they're quite easy to gain 1 dodge counter. Or I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna just keep testing this theory that more tiles is making the game too hard, but. So we can dodge now. What's this? Every turn a flag is removed. When you run out of flags, the level is over. Okay, so we choose where we spawn these in. Put one there. One there. We're not gonna survive this. It's just not gonna happen. Okay, so what are we doing? Right, I've got a dodge token. What does that? Prevents taking damage from an attack, resets after each turn. Okay. We're doing some dodgy business. So each turn we basically get, it's kind of like a bubble shield. Right. Dagger up there, axe there. Oof. Yeah, I feel like there's some really kind of core issue with I think the actual challenge of the game gets more difficult when you have more tile variety is interesting. I don't think that's necessarily something that needs to be designed out, but I think the solution that the developer has for what happens when the board is full up is not necessarily the best one. So the board is full up, we're going to kind of give you a minor punishment by making you pick a penalty, which now makes the game harder, and now we're going to let you take away 4 tiles. I feel like there's a simpler thing you could do, like, I don't know, like a whole row just randomly goes and a bad thing goes into that row. And it's more of like a UX flow type thing of like, I'm already having a bad time, and now you're like pausing the game and making me make a series of complex decisions about which of the 3 penalties do I want, and now which tiles do I remove. Just like remove a whole row of tiles and like force something bad into the grid or something. I don't know. Yeah, do a shuffle. I don't know. There's a better approach to it, I think. And maybe the overall structural problem of more tile variety makes the game too hard. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe that's an interesting thing for the game to lean into. But I do think currently the way that you're kind of penalized for filling up the grid is not the most interesting way of doing it, because you're punished with a series of choices which are like just a little bit too much thinking to have to do on top of the fact that you're already losing. You know, I would punish the player with something that is somewhat random and just quickly solves the problem of the board being filled up. With that one, I think that's my gut feeling on that. Pirate, Pillage and Plunder, last game for today. It's been a longer stream than usual. Thank you for sticking with me. I just wanted to make sure we gave these games the time that they needed. And I think the thing that was interesting about Tiles and Vials, the last game, is I did feel a bit of a turnaround on it. You know, like often when I see that those kind of problems with the layout and the art style and stuff, they can really put you on the wrong foot about the rest of the game, and you think, oh well, if the person hasn't really thought about these parts of the games, then maybe they haven't thought about any of it. But it did feel like a lot of it worked quite well. But the other problem I want to call out that I already mentioned, but I think we should sort of circle back to, is the amount of time it took for using the artifacts to feel beneficial was quite long. And once I kind of understood the game enough to use the artifacts and to make use of them, they felt like a really cool and important part of the game. And I think how they're positioned in the interface is going to have an effect there. We're so used to relics and jokers being a passive rule modification that you then play around versus an active thing that you look for. So I think making sure that the way that they're presented in the interface feels much more like I'm playing World of Warcraft or I'm playing Diablo and I'm clicking on my character's ability, because at the moment they don't look like that. They look like they are, you know, the way that you position things in an interface and the way that you choose the art objects is going to evoke for players like another set of relationships in their head from other games. And if your things look like Slay the Spire relics when actually they are like your little ability icons in Baldur's Gate 3, then you're missing the opportunity to use a cognitive shortcut that the player already has, and instead you're like working against the grain of how their brain is already set up in relation to other games. So I would look out for that. Pirates. Pirate, Pillage, and Plunder. If the stream keeps going down a little bit. Okay. Oh, Captain, welcome to your first expedition. Here, you'll carve a path through treacherous waters. Okay, to defeat the rule of the sea, to claim it as your own. Okay, here's where we start our journey. Select our next destination from those nearby, and let's get the voyage underway. Okay, that feels like it could have been 2 sentences. We're going to go and kill that guy. Here's where we start. There's nothing for me here. Oh, it's because it's my home. What's going on here? This is the battlefield where you'll fight for pirate supremacy. So we're doing cards. I've got 2 Bills and 3 Rogers. That already feels strange. Each turn you'll draw cards to help your cause. To play a card, drag them from your hand to a base tile. Okay, Roger. Oh, I see. We're doing left to right combat, and that's where he can go, and that's how far I can move. And we've got barrels to blow up. You need mana to play cards. Oh. Each battle you start with 1 mana and gain 1 additional each turn. Why is it mana in a pirate game? Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to rag on the art too long, but yeah, it's a weird mix. There is a world where you can do pixel art and you can do these together, but I don't think it has this harsh, like 3-color chunky pixel border directly around this character, you know? Yeah, why is it mana? I get that that's what it would be in other games, but it doesn't make sense as a global resource here. Your current power is a dynamite. Click on a tile to make it go boom. Okay. Thanks. So we didn't have enough mana to play a card, so they taught us how to use the hero power instead. And now the tutorial is stuck. I think. Continue. Now that we're out of mana, we've naught left to do. Click the button to discard. Yeah, okay. So all of this is basically Hearthstone. Right, we've got cards, we play them using mana. We can also use mana to do a hero ability, which is the dynamite thing here. A tiny little stick of dynamite here. Now we've got 2 mana, so we can play Bill, but we can't play Roger. It feels very, very strange to have these as named characters and have duplicates of them. Your first unit, what a special moment this is. Let's click a unit to see it in greater detail. Right, click a unit to see it in greater detail. Units have 4 main stats which impact their combat abilities. Okay, so this is attack and health and how far they move, right? Attack, this is the damage. Yeah, okay. Oh, come on. I feel like the game is in a strange state to have this kind of tutorial in it. It's like you've done a launch day tutorial, which is like, this is the final tutorial that should be in the game in terms of like how structured this tutorial is. And it's very strange to see something that feels this far along in a game where so many of the art pieces feel like they could do with a little bit more iteration. Units are asleep the first time they're played. Yeah, okay, summoning sickness, I get it. I've played Magic the Gathering. I understand that you need to explain some of the mechanics of Hearthstone or Magic the Gathering to new players, but this project doesn't really feel like it's at a stage where you need to do that kind of robust tutorial for every single player. It feels like it's maybe at a stage where you should be doing earlier playtesting still and like refining how all of the art and interface works and looks. So it's a bit of a challenge when I see something like that. It feels like a commercial tutorial, right? This isn't a tutorial to enable someone to engage with your playtest. It's a tutorial where it's like, hey, this is the final game. Here's the full polished tutorial. And a lot of what the other stuff I'm seeing doesn't feel like a final game that should have that level of tutorialization in it yet. You know? Looks like some of these shells are occupied. No matter, our plan remains the same. What, these? These over here, these enemies? Once our units cross the battlefield, they'll start dismantling the snail captain. Snaptin? But they're not just going to roll over the snail crew. Okay, I like some of this writing. Let's check the enemy tent. It's about to summon some snails. You can see them in greater detail with a click, left or right. It feels like much too much tutorialization for what's going on here. Escargo.
Ha-ha. Ha-ha. Ha-ha.
Can I move these guys?
Yeah.
So there's some UX stuff here where I'm... The situation I'm currently in is I don't understand the status of these guys in terms of whether I've already moved them this turn. And I know that I should, right? It's very easy to look and go, well, you just did this. You should... But most games that have this kind of format, like Into the Breach and stuff, they would have some way of visually communicating who had already moved and stuff like that. It doesn't really have that. I hover over them and they show me how far they can move, and then I click on them and start to interact with them and try and get them to move, and they can't. That's not good. And again, this is what I'm saying. This is all of this UX stuff is stuff that you should have resolved before you got to the point where you were building like a commercial level tutorial that assumed that your game was ready for market, which is what it felt like. Oh, it is an auto battler, right? I didn't. I'm clicking on them. That looks like it's a movement interface, and it's actually just showing me the range, right? So they are going to just do their own thing. So what I need to do is use my dynamite and use my mana to just keep spawning dudes. Look at the lanes where they're coming in. Put stuff in the lanes on my side and just keep doing that, right? It is an auto battler, so we're doing sort of turn-based Clash Royale type thing. Let's grab our plunder. Add a new tool to our arsenal. Okay. Lucky Harpoon, the Kraken, Big Bertha. Deal 100 to the enemy base. Okay, if you say so. Why give me a fake choice and say you have to choose this one? The tutorial is... I'm sorry, the tutorial is outright bad. And I think you've built the tutorial prematurely before the rest of the game is just kind of intuitive. But yeah, don't... That's a really good way to rub people up the wrong way. Like, tutorialize a choice and then make the choice for people. Not good. If you're going to do that... Right, time to play your first weapon. Left click and get started. Okay, if you're doing that because you wanted to tutorialize weapons, then either give me a choice of 3 weapons and then at this stage doesn't matter which one they are, or give me a choice where it's like 3 of the Lucky Harpoon and I'm just constrained by the interface to choose that thing. But don't like have a character pop up and say, oh, we're making a choice. Actually, we're not. Pick this. Like, that's really, really irritating. Yeah, it's not a funny joke. Like, I get where they're going for. I'm not on board with the game yet for them to be, like, messing me about in that way. That kind of nudge, nudge, wink joke when you're at this stage of someone's playing your game for 5 minutes, you're trying to prove to the player that they're going to have a good time, and like hitting them with like quite a lot of clunky UX and then making jokes is not a good combination of things. I'd like focus on making the game good before you start putting character into places where it doesn't need to be yet, you know? Bernard said, how would you suggest to do tutorialization in early playtests? Just some verbose text boxes before the game starts. Well, for a start, you shouldn't be doing... I mean, your earliest playtest should be while you're there and you're watching people and you're teaching them the game. right? So your earliest playtest should be on a Zoom call or watching over someone's shoulder and teaching them the game verbally, because before you can teach people how to play the game in the game itself, you need to actually see what people struggle with the most conceptually. And then I would say the next stage is you put some helper stuff in the game, you put all the helper stuff that needs to be in the game, but it's like it's on a pause screen, or maybe if it's an action game, there's just a thing in the corner that shows you what the buttons on the gamepad are, and you put stuff in to tutorialize the game that is just for the playtest, and it's not meant to teach, it's not meant to be like, here is what the tutorial would be in the final game. Final game tutorials like this with a character talking to you and stuff, that's for after you finish the game and you're absolutely sure the rest of the game works. I'm not totally convinced that a game where we've got all of this kind of mismatched art style. I got through so much of the tutorial before I even realized it was an auto battler. And one of the things, Hotwilds just said something else I've just found out is that if the tutorial is too complicated, it might be a sign that the game is the thing that is too complicated. Absolutely, right? And here it might just be a case that we're trying to explain too many parts of the game, and that means that the important parts are getting lost. Because the amount of time it took me to realize that I was playing an auto battler where the characters walked along themselves, there's a very, very good chance if we scroll back that I was told that in the tutorial. But if the tutorial is like 500% more words than it needs to be, way more steps than it needs to be, then the important information is going to get lost. Because what a tutorial should be is, here's why you're doing this, now do this, now do this, now do this, now do this. And the player, you're there to guide the player through the experience of learning themselves, not to tell them lots of things about how the game works. The game should be, you know, the game should be telling you how it works by how you interact with it. And that's why it's so important that you have like all of the UX and all of the like helper mechanics, like how things are highlighted and stuff, really, really solid before you start deciding what to tutorialize in this more explicit way. Because if enough of the core game is kind of intuitive enough, then lots and lots of this tutorial dialogue could have gone away, right? And that's kind of why I see the order of operations in that kind of order, because you don't know what people need to learn until you've made the game to like a decent standard where a lot of it teaches itself, and then you've played it with people and you've seen what they need to learn, and then you build the tutorial around that. There are so many stages, and this just kind of feels emblematic of what happens when you don't go through those stages. Now it's equipped. You can click on your hero to start an attack. Okay, so I've got a sword. Drag it to the battlefield to damage everything, even allies in range. Okay, so getting some confusing. I clicked my hero now. I'm going to click them. Nice shot. No feedback. If you hit the enemy base tiles, you'll deal damage to the captain as well. Okay, the captain is this little monkey this time. Yeah, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be playing this one for. I think it feels less like something where I really want to comment on the game design, because I feel like the amount of time it's taking to get us to the game is just too long. But it does feel like a good example of like project timeline stuff, of like when do you do different things. Did you notice the change in the enemy captain demeanor? That means they're about to play a spell. Okay, so this is their thing they're going to do. Check the enemy intent to see what they've got planned. Okay. Again, this should just be interesting enough that I want to look at it. They're going to play fresh banana. Okay. Do I need that level of information? I mean, again, when you look at how enemy intents are used in other games, they're usually just telling you a broad category of the thing that they're going to do, so that you can decide whether to defend or not. In this case, I can't really do anything based on the information that they're going to give a unit a banana. So it's like we've taken a mechanic from another game, put it in, and I can't actually act on it in the same way because it's an auto battler and not Slay the Spire. I haven't actually read rules and heuristics, but I have heard specifically Magic the Gathering, like high-level players talk about that quite a lot. I can't remember the name of the podcast. I think it occasionally posts in our Discord on the automated podcast suggestions feed. Is it Distraction Makers? There's a YouTube channel called Distraction Makers that is about game design, but it's mostly about Magic the Gathering. And they talk about rules and heuristics quite a bit. And it was kind of like, actually, so if you want to understand rules and heuristics, so you probably used a mnemonic at some point in your life, right? A mnemonic is like a way to remember something else, right? It's a metaphor or a technique that allows you to remember something else. And sometimes those things are like little rhymes. Sometimes they are acronyms, like Richard of York gave battle in vain is like one of the ways that we remember the order of the visible spectrum or the rainbow colours in the UK. A mnemonic is a way of making it easier to remember something. And a heuristic is kind of like the same thing, but it's a way of making it easier to understand something. So if you think back to the previous game that we were looking at, we think back to Tiles and Vials, and how we were talking about the interface there. Right, one of the issues with the artifacts here is that it's not using the heuristics for how we would normally understand a hero power or a spell to be used. Because most of the people who have played a fantasy RPG where you're a guy with an axe fighting a direwolf are going to have played MOBAs, MMOs, CCGs, you know, CRPGs like Baldur's Gate, all of these games where there is a particular convention for saying this is a spell that your character can cast, and that is never like an item being over here in the top right of the screen, right? So players have an existing heuristic or like a mental model of how a particular type of thing works, and your game is going to be easier or more difficult for them to understand based on like how much that fits the existing thing. And likewise, we have similar things with gameplay. If you play something like Magic the Gathering, the other week I went to a Magic the Gathering cube draft locally because I'm a big old nerd and I haven't played Magic in ages. There was a guy there who hadn't played Magic but had played Yu-Gi-Oh! And he was able to learn the other CCG very, very quickly because of heuristics that he brought with him from the other game. And he understood what control and aggro meant. If you don't know what control and aggro mean, it doesn't matter. But the point is that there was like a structure in the other game that he could kind of learn the new game through. And sometimes what happens is we just take design patterns from one game and we move them over to another game and we think, oh well, that works there, and it doesn't actually work in the same way. And what you're doing is creating like this confusing set of signals for a new player that it's the same sort of game. We've got so much like Hearthstone DNA here and a little bit of Slay the Spire DNA, but then actually what we're playing is much closer to well, it's passive, isn't it? We're not piloting any of the stuff that happens in here. We're just determining what spawns in on the left. So we're using a lot of the language from other types of games to make an auto battler. And I feel like we've ended up adding a lot of complexity, a lot of on-screen complexity that is just kind of misleading and confusing. Yeah, heuristics are like stratagems. In the context of Magic the Gathering, they're like, how do I play the game well? Yeah, rules are like, how do I play the game? And then heuristics in that context are like, how do I play the game well? Right? And you might have like mental shortcuts to do that, which is like rush face or something. And they're so important that we invent these little like nicknames for them, yeah? Yeah, Distraction Makers is a great channel. I like it. Magic, I mean, like most tabletop things, is like one of those things where my interest in it outweighs my time, ability, and money to engage with it. So I spend a lot of time just like listening to other people talk about it because I'm not going to have the time. Okay, as captain of this vessel, it is your duty to make the tough decisions none of the crew has the stomach for, like what's for dinner. Gain a seaweed salad. I'm not sure what happened with the art here. I think maybe it's just a case of like I've got a friend who's an illustrator and they do this cool kind of D&D fantasy portrait stuff and it's great. But I think there are just too many levels of different things. Like the card art is cool. The way these guys are rendered in a sort of Monkey Island style once they get on the board is cool. But the appeal of the two things doesn't match up enough for the like level of difference between them. If that makes sense. And I think there is a world where you could get them to fit together, but I think all of the clunkiness of these like, you've got a border here as well. You can see in that border where some of the pixels aren't actually square. Yeah, they like starting us with 1 mana to force us to use our hero power, but it just feels a bit... Well, in Hearthstone, if you start with loads of 2 and 3 cost cards, it's because you built your deck wrong and you didn't build a curve with enough chance of drawing a 1-drop on the first. But no, I mean, they start you with 1 mana and then you gradually get more mana each turn. So I guess that's maybe something they've taken from another game where the base, your maximum amount of mana goes up each turn. But yeah, it means we don't really have options on turn 1 because none of our deck is 1s. The only thing that is a 1 is our weapon that we drew and the hero power. It means the first turn isn't very interesting either. I think there's a lot of... I think there's a lot of potential here. But I do think some of it just comes back to this kind of... The game should be way more kind of polished and self-explanatory before you get to that stage of like bombarding us with character-filled story dialogue. Because I'm quite interested in the auto-battler part of this. But it's taken me a long time to just get to the point where... like, so much of this could have been 3 lines of dialogue where it's just like, play these guys, put them here, watch them fight. And then when I try and play something, you don't have enough mana. Fine, you know? But that took so long to explain itself. And again, to me, what that communicates is the devs already think that this is a like, saleable level of quality. Because they're presenting the tutorial not as a way of teaching playtesters, but as a way of teaching customers how to play the game. And I think, you know, there's just a lot of other things in the game that are like a little bit clunky or fugly. That you need to get right before you're starting to, you know, tutorialize the game as if it's a finished product, because it's not. Yeah, I don't like the fact that we've got named characters. I mean, they should be called stuff like Swab and Gunner and stuff. They shouldn't be like a guy with a name if they're duplicates. It's very strange. If you've got a collectibles game and they are named characters, well, then they're one of a kind. If they're just a goblin, then you can have 5 just a goblin, but it's weird to give them names like that. I'm gonna wrap things up there, I think. That was a strange experience today, because when I looked at the games initially and I gave my gut reactions, I expected the other things to be the other way around. I looked at Tiles and Vials. I saw this slightly clunky looking game, which triggered my kind of Blade Runner instincts. Let's not get too into that. But I expected to be disappointed by this game. And what actually happened was, yes, it's clunky. yes, the dev clearly needs to learn some like very basic graphic design and UX stuff, but once we got into about 15-20 minutes of this, I really enjoyed the game and I wanted to keep playing it. And although there were a few design decisions where I thought you can probably come up with something better than that, like what happens when the board is full, I felt like this was a good game with a lot of potential, and I want to see the dev improve this, and I want to play it again. Like I look at this and I'm like, yeah, I would play that. I would play another run of that. I would play that for another half hour. And it's kind of, it feels kind of serviceable as it is. I don't think it's going to do gangbusters, but I feel like if that was released as it is and I paid like $3 for it, I would think this is a competent game and it kind of delivers what it says it's going to do. And that's surprising because my initial response to just looking at that was, and then I had the other way round with Pirates, Pillage and Plunder, where perhaps because, again, it's kind of like it's this rush to market thing where I look here, you know, you've got a really appealing, professional looking capsule. The screenshots make the game look quite good. But then when I get into it, it feels like the actual game is totally underbaked and you're kind of rushing it to market. So even though this was like, you know, presented as a demo or a playtest, it just feels like it's much earlier in development. And some of these like clunky, there's loads of, I click through these, there's loads of variety. We've got, once we get off the main map, we get into a big map like FTL. There's loads of stuff that you've put in this game yet. So far that looks really interesting, and I like auto battlers, but where was the point in that game where I got to do any interesting engine building that defined how my run was going to be different each time? If it was there, I didn't see it because you spent so much time tutorializing like the basic mechanics of how the auto battler worked. The auto battler is supposed to be relatively auto, and I think one that I played recently that I really, really liked, and again, this was real time, so slightly different, but Soul's End, people who like auto battlers, this is like my favorite one that I've been sent in the last year. And, you know, the auto battler is very much like, it looks a little bit jank, but at least it's consistent, right? There's only 2 different sizes of pixels on the screen. But the way that this one works is you place your units on the grid, and then the items that you get that you would normally assign to like a specific character if you were playing Dota Underlords or something, the items go on the grid as well, but then they have like effect patterns where this item will give people a fire attack and it does it to every unit in a diagonal, and this item does it to every unit in a line. So you build this grid of interactions between your characters and your items, and then when you watch them fight, it's very automatic. And that's all about, like, again, coming back to this concept of engine building, of you give the set a player of mechanics that have a rich bunch of interactions that, like, when this happens, then this happens. And now this rule is changed in this way. And that is like, we don't call it engine building in video games very much because that's not a genre. It's like a meta mechanic. It's like a systemic design pattern that exists in a lot of games. But auto battlers run on engine building. A lot of deck builders are engine building using cards, players as specific type. You know, Balatro type games are all about engine building. It's like the interesting decisions in the game aren't what happens when the combat is happening. They are what happens in the combat because of the choices you made before the combat. That's what's interesting. And you can have this, you know, there's a balance between how much of the game is about what you build and how much of the game is about what happens when you pilot what you build, right? That's the classic thing in CCGs. I'm like, I build my deck before a match, and then when I sit down and play the match, I have to pilot it. And there's like a to and fro relationship between these things, whereas an auto battler is all about the engine building, and then the piloting is just something that you watch that's satisfying to watch, and that's great too. There's like a how much weight do you put on each side of the thing, in each side of the equation? Is it about the piloting? Is it about the building? And and if we look at the other 2 games, okay, Tiles and Vials, there wasn't much that we were doing to modify our deck. It wasn't like a pure deck building game. It's just like, okay, you're occasionally going to get a new tile, you're occasionally going to upgrade a tile. But the piloting mini game that was based on 3 was interesting enough for that to work, right? And if we compare that to Pirates, Pillage and Plunder, it's like, okay, there's there's an auto battler, but it's quite an active auto battler where I'm choosing where my characters go, and then there doesn't seem to be like, if I played more rounds, I would probably see that I can get more weapons and get different crew members and stuff like that, and I can do the engine building. But the amount of time it takes to get through one of those auto battlers is relatively long, and that means that it's like the auto battler isn't interesting in itself for that to take up so much time. And then choices I make as I build my deck, is it about the piloting of it as I play the things in the rows? And it just kind of feels a little bit like it's a bit too clunky and slow for either of those things to really shine as the main thing. And I think, you know, if you went back to like, what's the like kind of gold standard polished game version of that, where it's like an auto battler. I mean, this isn't an auto battler per se, because you're still making choices about which lane you put things in. So it's kind of, it's that thing of like, I think if I think back to Soul's End, you know, the game we just played is like turn-based Clash Royale. You are choosing where the characters go, and you have like a loadout of characters, and then you have mana, and you're like, oh, I can't play my knight yet because I need 5 mana. Wait 10 seconds, I'll play my knight, put him there, da da da. And again, like someone said in the chat, turn-based Plants versus Zombies. We're kind of making those active choices, which means it's no longer an auto battler. And if I think back to Soul's End, one of the things I really felt when I was playing this, and you know, any auto battler, a good auto battler, I think, has this quality where it's like the actual battle is over quite quickly, and the satisfaction comes from like the strategy of building what plays out in the battle. But also when you're watching the battle, it might only take 30 seconds, but you have this kind of the same thing that you have when you're watching a sport on TV, where you're exercising this judgment skill of looking at the situation and trying to work out who's going to win, right? And like watching for the turning point. And that turning point might be, oh, I'm going to lose soon, or, oh, yeah, we're going to do it. But that's like a exciting thing to do. That's an interesting, exciting thing to do. And because it's a short window of time of 10, 20, 30 seconds, you can really kind of engage with it. Whereas I think what I just played was just this weird middle ground where it's like, the thing of just choosing which lane things go into isn't that interesting. Like, it's not exciting to watch the combat happen, and my engagement with it is just, where do I put the thing? How do I spend my mana? And it's kind of just, I think what I was feeling with the pirate game is it's too complicated for how casual it feels like it should be, right? All of this lovely art style and presentation to me is communicating that this is going to be quite a chill, casual game. And then we look at the interface a little bit. It's like, okay, well, maybe there's some depth here because I can see all these statistics and stuff. So maybe because I see mana costs and I see different stats for movement. And so maybe it's going to be a bit more complex. But then when you start playing it, it's just in this weird middle ground where I don't feel like I'm doing like a deep thinky game like an Into the Breach. I don't feel like I'm doing a casual kind of set and forget auto battler where I just get to watch something cool happen and make some little judgments and then, you know, make strategic choices between those very short rounds of combat. It just feels like it's in a very strange design space where it's not really satisfying what I want from a deep tactics game. It's not satisfying what I want from like a casual engine building focused auto battler, and it's just taking all of these mechanics from different places and putting them together in a way that's not particularly satisfying any of those needs that I have and go to any of those genres with. Because like you know, I like all of those things. I like those very casual auto battlers. I like things like Soul's End. And that's because they have very deep engine building where I make strategic decisions about the loadout. And then when I watch the combat, it's this very snappy, quick, casual thing where I get to make a little judgment about, oh, you know, oh, I'm losing. Oh, no, my firepower is procced. And now they're all on fire. Oh, I'm winning again. That's really nice. And this is just in a middle ground where it's not quite satisfying any of the things that it tries to do. All of the parts of it come at the expense of another part. Yeah, so thanks. Three-sided die, thanks for dropping in. I'm sorry I ripped it to shreds so much. And there's so many things here that I like. There's so many things here I like. There's so many bits of art I like. There's lots of kind of stuff here that was appealing to me, but it did feel like once I got interacting with it and I was doing the tutorial and trying to use the interface and everything, it just didn't live up to how nice this looks at face value. So it was a very strange turnaround for me there. But yeah, hopefully you can do some stuff with it. I do think just stepping back a little bit and being like, okay, let's rip out the tutorial for a while. Let's just focus on doing some more like focused playtesting where you watch people play the game, or you go on a video call with them, and you, instead of like maybe you tell them a little bit about how to play the game, and then you see what they intuitively do. But yeah, some of it's going to be pacing, because that balance of like how much of the game is like passive and you just watch it, and how much of it is you making decisions. I don't think choosing the lane for stuff to go into is a super interesting decision. It's okay in Clash Royale because you're doing it in real time. I think the turn-basedness of this makes it feel like it's going to be a deeper, thinkier game than it is, and I'm not sure. Yeah, I would love to have been able to play a snappier, faster version of this with no tutorial, where I could just play more of the game quicker, but the tutorial slowed down the onboarding so much that I wasn't able to just kind of play it and get a feel for the strategy like I was with the previous game. So yeah, good luck with it. I think there's a lot there that kind of shows that you can do what you're trying to do, but there's some decisions there that just feel like they are you know, just a little bit all over the place in terms of what they're trying to do and the end result that they produce. And then, yeah, just to jump back to the first game that we played, thank you so much to the dev of Digital Druid for submitting that today. As you will all know, well, most of you will know, I recently changed the channel a couple of months ago so that instead of doing the main streams and then like a side stream to say thanks to patrons for like supporting the channel and doing like a separate patron stream, now what I do is I take the games submitted by the patrons, which is on a separate sheet. There's a submission portal over on our private Discord for the patrons where they can submit their games, and you know, about 20 a month come through that way. I pick those first, and then I go back into the backlog where we had Tiles and Vials and Pirate, Pillage and Plunder, and I pick games from there. Sometimes they get seen straight away. Sometimes they might have been in the waiting list for a year. It just depends how they fit. And I try and pick some stuff goes together. Today I was really just looking at grid-based games in general and tiles and stuff like that. So the last game in particular wasn't super tile related because I was just quickly picking stuff that felt like it might be related. But thanks for sending this over. I think Digital Druid has a lot of potential. I'm not totally sure about the title. I'm not even sure about the Druid theming at the moment. It's like, I think if you lean into the Druid theming a little bit more, then changing some of the terminology so that there are like actual spells, because a lot of people's concept of Druid is much more like the fantasy Druid rather than the real historical Druid. So I think there's a lot of like jargon in this game, and if you can simplify some of that by turning some things into icons and like naming craft to spells so that it's a little bit easier to understand. We did a little bit of like a side quest with the art here, and look, I think what I presented as an alternative vision for the art in this game may not work, and it may not be worth doing, but I think like a broader thing to reflect on with this project is you've clearly like developed an aesthetic for it, and you've thought a lot about art direction, and you've gradually built this aesthetic where like everything I see on the screen here goes together very well and goes with the music very well. There's some very good creative direction here, and that's a very positive thing. I think the reluctance to try out the top-down grid version of the game might kind of hint at, and this is more like we're getting into more like creative coaching, self-help territory here, but it might hint at this like you found a comfort zone in terms of a set of processes and styles that you're happy doing, and then anything that's outside of that now is a bit like, oh no, I don't want to learn a new thing. So I'm not, you know, I don't know you, I don't know if that's exactly what's happening, but it's definitely something I recognize in myself happening all the time, where like I get comfortable doing a particular type of pixel art or a particular type of drawing, or making a particular type of music, or even just doing a type of code and like using a particular type of pattern in coding when I'm not an expert at it yet. But there are certain things where I'm like, I'm really confident in that, I'm just going to do everything that way now. And you know, I think it's poignant for a game about growth to give us like things to think about in terms of personal growth. That was an excellent segue, if I do say myself. But you know, be careful that if your game has things in it where it's like the game would clearly be better if I did X, but I don't want to do X because it's outside my comfort zone. That's like the universe telling you something, because you have an opportunity there to learn something and expand your skill set by doing this thing that's slightly outside your comfort zone. And the game is giving you an opportunity by going, hey, this game would be way better if you did this other thing. And so that's like an alignment between the thing that makes the game better and the thing that helps you skill up at something. And I think you need to look for those opportunities, because there's different modes, right? Sometimes we're working on a project and it's like, this is nearly done. I just need to like buckle down and focus on getting it done. And I need to focus on what I'm good at and not get sidetracked by doing new things that I'm not any good at. But if it's just like trying something in a slightly different art style or redoing certain things, like the amount of times in my current project in Golem Gourmet where I've gone through all of the main tiles in the game and like re-arted them and like changed the color palettes and stuff, it's an obscene amount. And some of that will just be like, it's a comfort zone thing again of I kind of like tweaking these things, so I'm going to keep doing it when I've got something more important to do. But at the same time, I think that willingness to change what's already there is a really helpful quality to foster in yourself. And you can always do it in a non-destructive way as well. You can always like, you know, if you're thinking, oh, what would this game look like if I changed all the art assets from this to this? You can keep all the original art assets and you can like, you know, change the names and references in the project or whatever, however works for you. You can kind of work out non-destructive ways of experimenting with doing things in a different way. You know, I've just done that with my mobs where they've got like, there's a system now that looks for sprite names for new mobs and says, hey, does this mob have another sprite name that has underscore attack or underscore fly after it? And if it does, it assigns them all automatically. And if it doesn't, it falls back to other types. So there are ways of like creating your own little internal workflows within a project that make it easier for you to experiment, rather than go, okay, we're switching from method A to method B now, everything must change to suit the new method. So yeah, have a think about that with things you're working on, because I think often we present ourselves with these options where it's like, I can do things the way I'm doing, or I can do things the other way, and it's all or nothing, when actually there's some more like middle ground way of experimenting with the new thing without like throwing out everything you've already done or making them kind of switchable, you know? So Hokapo said, could it be about wanting to ship the game instead of spending countless hours on revamping the art? I know from my own project that making card art can take ages and I need to find shortcuts and eventually an artist collaborator. Yeah, I mean, it's nearly always about wanting to ship the game, isn't it? And I think, I mean, like, I don't know how many people are new to the channel. I've never shipped a solo project on my own. I've always worked as a game designer at other studios and stuff like that. And most of the games I've made on my own have just been like hobby projects I put on itch. I get them to like a certain standard and then I'm like, I'm fine with that. That's done its job. I've learned from it. It goes out into the world. So deciding when things are finished is about like, why are you doing it in the first place, right? Because you could be doing something just to learn in case it can finish whenever. You could be doing something to practice the skill of finishing things, right? Derek Yu has a very good, famous Tumblr post about how to finish games. Derek Yu, the creative Spelunky, that everyone should read, and like how finishing things is a skill in its own right. It's a skill I'm not very good at. So if you're like finishing something because it needs to be finished, that's worth doing at some point. But I think when you're really taking things seriously and you're like, I want this to do well, I want people to buy it, then you do need to allow the game to have some say in its own scope, if that makes sense. Because you can say, oh, I'm going to make a game in 3 months and then I'm going to release it. And that's okay if you have a very, very good sense of how quick you are at working things. You know, maybe you're making a sequel to something else you made. And you go like, well, that made me 6 months. I'm going to make a sequel in 3 months. I know I can do that. If you're very experienced, you have a good way of judging how long it takes you to do things. But sometimes I think when people that are like amateurs, hobbyists, semi-professionals, whatever you want to call it, We don't know how long we take, and we start like getting bogged down with like going on about scope and stuff like that. And sometimes it's like, well, you know, if you're trying to make a commercial game and the game that you've made is not currently at the level of quality that someone would pay for it, or like the depth of content that someone will pay for it, then the game scope needs to grow for it to be a viable thing, you know? Hot World said you can identify how the thing could be better, and this applies to everything, right? Building a new system, redoing art, whatever, and ask yourself if you know it will take forever, or if you think it will because it seems scary. Yeah, that's a really helpful thing. One of the things I find a lot, Hot Worlds, is when I'm judging how long something will take me, I often overestimate it. And that's quite a helpful response, like particularly in a workplace. If someone says, can you do this in a day? Say, no, it will take me 3 days. Very helpful way of defending your own time. But what I find is when I'm assessing how long a feature will take me to program or how long it will take me to make some art assets, I often underestimate myself. And I think the reason is that we have a bias towards thinking that we are who we used to be rather than who we are now. So your idea of your self-image of like how skilled you are at particular things, and I don't think people who are really unskilled have this because of like the Dunning-Kruger effect and people don't know what they don't know and stuff like that. But I think if you're reasonably good at something, like you've been practicing making games for a few years and you've got like quite a realistic idea of your abilities, chances are you're taking all of your experience you have of making games, whether that's 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and you're basing your idea of what you can do now based on the majority of that time, right? So if you've been making art for 5 years and you go, oh, can I do this? Can I pull this style off? And you think about yourself and your own skills, you're usually assessing yourself based on how you were a year ago rather than how you are now. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's important to be practicing the thing all the time, even if you're not like actively trying to make a good thing, because that's how you assess how good you actually are at things so that you can work more efficiently. Because I find that I find it all the time. I'm getting better with self-confidence with art, but with coding historically, I've always, in the last couple of years, since I've got moderately okay at it, you know, since I've gone from the point where I have to look up a tutorial for everything to, oh no, I can imagine a feature in my head and I have a reasonably good idea of how I would program that in my game engine. And maybe I need to go to the manual a few times for like how this works in a function or whatever. But, you know, I've got to that level of confidence with programming where I can take an idea in my head and make it work in an amount of time. I still think things are going to take longer than they will. And that's, again, because I'm not thinking of who I am now. I'm thinking of who I was a year ago. And I'm making my judgments based on that. So I think that's why it's kind of, you know, obviously if you're diving into like big week-long mini projects without thinking it through, then that's bad. But with little short things, often it's better to just get started because things are quicker than you think they're going to be. So yeah. So thanks for dropping in today. I need to go and do some admin and some dad stuff and fight my internet service provider because I'm trying to switch to a better one, but the old one want me to pay a fee for breaking contract. But if they didn't want me to break contract, they should have made the internet work better so it wouldn't keep cutting out when I'm streaming. So I'm going to go and deal with that. Thank you so much for joining today. I don't know if we had the dev of the second game in the stream, but we had the other two devs in. Thank you for coming and hanging out. I know it can be quite intense when someone's just like taking your game apart, but I really do appreciate when people show up live in the stream. It's really, really good to see, and I hope you find it helpful. And just remember that the bit where I'm just playing the game and thinking out loud, anyone can do that. You don't need a game designer to do that. Anyone can do that. You just need someone who is like, you know, reasonably emotionally and intellectually self-aware to play your game and think out loud about what they're experiencing. And then you need to take what they say with a little pinch of salt. So think back to that example from earlier. Someone says your game's too hard, but they said, oh, next time I need to do this. Well, the game wasn't too hard because they learned something about how to do better next time. That kind of stuff. Watch out for that. Keep playtesting and all of that kind of stuff. And have a good weekend. See you soon. Bye-bye.